All right, everybody, we are live. Welcome to Conscience Omnivore. My name is Powell. I've got with me a couple guests today. We have Logan Blake on, and we have Mike on to discuss veganism and I'm sure some related topics. I'll start with just a quick intro and then maybe give everybody a few words to kind of state their position or background. If anybody hasn't watched my channel, it's basically a lot about veganism, ethics, and gardening, and kind of growing your own food, backyard gardening, that kind of stuff, and veganic gardening. So that's pretty much my thing. And then like Logan, if you want to go next, then we'll go to Mike after.
Everybody knows me already. we could just go on to the next.
All right. So Mike, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Hey, everybody. I'm Mike. Kind of similar to you, Conscience Omnivore. I'm a big, avid backyard gardener. For the longest time, was a full-time RVer. So I definitely like to travel, like to go out there and, see the world and stuff like that. My background's a little different than probably a lot of other people. So, yeah, I'm willing to just jump in and we can kind of get to know each other, as we talk and have these discussions. And I do appreciate the fact you guys are so professional and you guys keep it real. So I'm honored to be here and be able to talk to you guys. Like I said, I've watched your guys' channels for a while now. And, like I was telling you earlier, the gardening stuff that you're doing is really cool. And it's stuff that I've been doing for years now. My family's been doing for years. So I'm really, really looking forward to talking to you guys for sure. Nice.
Cool, man. That's good. Okay. So I guess if you want to just kind of start with an opening statement of, your position.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna pretty much ramble off a list of just 7 things, and then I want to kind of open the floor. So coming where my position is, I think big animal agriculture is horrible. I also think big plant agriculture is horrible, and we can talk about why I feel that way. So I would say that that's the first 2. We all know animal agriculture is not good, and I would never sit here and tell you that it is, nor will I ever defend that position. The same thing with plant agriculture as well. I'm not going to defend that position either for reasons that we can bring up later. Big agriculture, right? I don't believe that we should be putting petrochemicals on plants. We all know that the fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, they are class 1 carcinogens. And you're putting them on food in order to feed the masses. So that would be something that I'm also against. I'm not going to eat food that has petrochemicals on it. The next thing is I find veganism to be interesting. 84% of vegans revert back to some kind of meat-based diet or some kind of meat in their diet. So that's something that I'm open. I've never been a vegan, right? I've never been a vegetarian because I've always consumed, animal products in some extent, right? So I guess that would probably be more of a inside conversation between two people that are of the cloth, so to speak. So that would be something that I'm interested in hearing your guys' opinions on, because I don't know. I don't have that personal experience. We all know climate change is a real thing, right? 97% of scientists, and we can go into that data as well. But we do know the climate's changing, and it's not changing necessarily in our favor. And we can talk about that. Processed foods, whether it's, plant-based or animal-based, I think we can all agree that processed foods is bad. And then I believe that human beings are omnivores, but you can live a completely healthy diet, vegan diet, as long as you get that supplementation. So I'm never going to sit here and tell you that being vegan is somehow unhealthy, or tell you that you can't get all the nutrients and stuff that you need from a vegan diet, because that's false. But the pretense that I come under is under a sustainability model. And then on top of the sustainability, I'm also preparedness and sustainability. Those are my two big things. And so for me, what I'm able to do at my own home here would prevent me from being a vegan. So then I open the floor.
Sorry, I missed the word you said right before sustainability. I didn't hear that one word. Preparedness. Okay.
I think they go hand in hand. If we're being honest, I think that you can say that I care more about preparedness than sustainability, or vice versa. I care more about sustainability than preparedness. But if you're doing one, the byproduct will be naturally the other one. And I think vegans actually, especially people that grow their own food, whether they're vegans or not, I think they understand this concept and model. And there's a reason why people especially nowadays, are wanting to grow more food than ever. And there's a reason for it. And I'm pretty sure you have your own reasons. And I'm pretty sure our reasons are probably very similar. So with that, I totally open the floor and want to know what your guys' thought process is on that.
Okay. I'd love to go first. I think you're really close to being vegan. The first couple things you said, I mean, I would just wholeheartedly agree with, like, 100%, no arguments.
Right.
Like, I think, mass scale agriculture, both plant and animal, definitely, horrible, really bad for the environment, very dangerous to people's health, and lots of problems. So I think we're in agreement there. I think if anybody, like you said, has watched my videos, and I'm sure if you said you've been doing this for a while with your family,
absolutely, yeah.
If you get people the opportunity to eat something that comes out of a healthy garden, that's like a permaculture style, no chemicals, no artificial fertilizers added kind of thing, and you eat something like that, and then compare it to like just your generic store-bought, God knows where it grew from kind of thing, just taste wise and the way you feel after eating that, it's just night and day. And I think people would feel that if they had it side by side. But I think what happens is people don't, and they just don't even know what it's supposed to taste like anymore. So it's
totally
it's just
and I'm sure with your garden you can definitely tell. I know for me, I know spinach that I've grown or bok choy that I've grown is way different than when I get it in the store. You know what I mean? It's just it's night and day different. The water content, the nutrient content, which I hope we can kind of get more into. But but at the same time, for me, and this is going to sound crazy, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to open the floor for you guys to kind of talk. I believe that animals and sustainability, when it comes to our diets, go hand in hand. And I'll tell you why, but I want to know what your kind of position on that, because every time I hear this argument, we're always talking about big agriculture. And so I just want to throw that out there and say, well, if we're going to talk about big agriculture, I'm totally in. Let's get rid of it. So with that being my premise, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So then, I just want to touch on something you said real quick about you pretty much just said that you do admit that it's possible to be healthy on a fully vegan diet.
Absolutely,
so I think at that point, that's kind of where I got to a few years ago when I actually became vegan, and what turned me vegan was when I realized that, and then I said, okay, well, if I don't need to eat animal products to be healthy, then why am I doing it? And the reason why I was doing it was because of taste, convenience, tradition, all these kinds of things. And then I realized, well, okay, that's not good enough to justify the ethics of killing a sentient animal that has feelings and wants to live just as much as I do. So that's where we can maybe take the discussion at some point. But I think that's an important agreement point. I think usually in these kinds of debates, if people don't start from that, then I think most of the debate has to go towards just convincing the other person that you don't need to consume the animal products. So I think that's actually really cool that you're already kind of there, and you don't have to argue about that.
Yeah, it's 2018. It's factual. You absolutely can. Now, I will vehemently, without equivocation, argue the sustainability aspect of a completely vegan diet. I mean, and that's where I come from. We can talk about those principles, absolutely. But I do think that plant-based diet is healthy. I mean, I'm never going to argue that. But when we start talking about the B12, when we start talking about the supplementation, when we start talking about big oil in general, because that's kind of where I want to take this, then that's where I come into the roadblock with most vegans. Not all. I think that we're going to have great conversations, and I think that we're going to agree on a lot of things. But the way my lifestyle is, I'm going to bring up a few things to you guys, and kind of get your thoughts and opinions. And I would love to talk about ethics because I do eat meat, right? So I do have to kill an animal, and I think it's inappropriate when we start saying murder and we start doing all these other things. Because we want to talk about murder, the difference between murder, homicide, manslaughter. We can talk about the intentions. We can talk about even Thomas Hobbes, right? When we start talking about what a social construct is, and we can start talking about all these different things. But I will maintain a position that I think that I can be a morally good person and still eat meat. So I really would like to know what Logan, because I know he's kind of in the corner there. I don't want him to, I'd like I said, I've watched his videos. I think they're great. I'd like to get his perspective on it.
Yeah, Logan, do you want to say a few words?
So I mean, you could just use, like, if we're talking about murder, right? You could just use you could use any word you want to describe an action. Like,
Right.
so if I'm taking a knife and I'm slitting an animal's throat, I
Right.
could just say I took a knife and I slit an animal's throat. Now, does
Right.
that make it better than murder by me just wording it that way? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, well, if we're talking about a system of we're talking about a social construct in which we, like Thomas Hobbes, right? Take him as a psychologist. We are born into a society of rules based upon ethics. And we can talk about what that term ethics is. But yeah, the terms matter, especially when we're talking about, you know, living in a system where there's a justice system and a police officer has to determine, you know, is this theft or is it burglary? Because technically you can have both, but they're different. Same thing with murder. You have intentional murder, and then you have somebody that has a DUI, and then you have manslaughter because it was never his intention to get drunk and kill somebody, maybe to get drunk and drive. So I do think the terms matter. But I guess my question to you, and I've heard you say this, out of survivability, right? Do you believe that it's okay for somebody to eat meat if it means their survival?
Okay, yeah. Before I answer that though, so like you're talking about legality, right? So I mean, if you're trying to figure out whether it was a crime like murder or whatever, you know, you might want to use that word. But I'm just talking about like if you just say what the action is, that doesn't make it any more moral or immoral than I just use a different word. It's still the same action, right?
So I saw the debate you had with I believe he's from Jordan, or he was the meat eater, and they were talking about nature and what's natural and all that stuff. We can talk about that too. But you said something that was profound to me, which was the spectrum. And if that's still what we're operating on, because you said spectrum, right? And if that's what we're operating on, that's great. I would love to take the conversation from there if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I could kind of see what you're saying too about like, yeah, it might be like you could slit an animal's throat by accident or something, right? You could trip and fall and slit it. Okay,
or intentionally for, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, intentionally, because the butcher, all the meat I produce, I butcher myself. So I like you guys had a video conversation with another guy who's in California, and he was talking about, oh, you like to get intimate with the people that kill your animals. Well, with me, I am that guy that does that, right? So, you know, yeah, I'm very intimate with myself and my animals. But I just want to make sure that if we're talking on the spectrum thing, that's good, and I'd like to keep going from there if that's okay.
Yeah. So I actually just had a talk about survival yesterday with Jesse. He was in the chat a couple of seconds ago. And so we were talking about if you're on a desert island, right? And you have a pig there.
Yeah,
would you eat the pig? So I mean,
right?
First you could look around whatever the pig's eating and then eat that, right? Because it's going to be pretty rare that you're in a survival situation where you have absolutely nothing to eat except the pig, right? I'm sure there is like if you're an Inuit or something.
Sure. Yeah, it depends, and that's a good point you bring up. So, and not that this matters, but I was watching you eat all that delicious spaghetti, and you know, you were talking about like support the troops and everything. So with me, I can tell you that I served 10 years. I graduated of SEER School, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. That's POW war camp in American military. And yeah, I mean, if you're talking about dropping somebody off in a harsh climate or even a non-harsh climate, I mean, depending on what you consider to be harsh, whether that's the Arctic or whether that's South America and stuff like that. I've always thought, one thing I've always found fascinating with your arguments is how much time and effort it takes to hunt food. And we're always talking about that. But how I was taught and how we're taught by people of bushcrafting skills. And that's actually not the way that you would get animals. We talk about snares, we talk about makeshift traps, we talk about going to where their domiciles are. So I find it very interesting when you debate people and you say about how much energy it takes to find an animal and all this other stuff when you could just eat wild edibles. I think that's a fascinating argument. And my question to you would be, two questions, Logan. What crop zone do you live in?
What crop zone?
What crop zone do you live in, sir?
What do you mean by crop zone?
There's different. It's like a U.S. thing, Logan. I don't know if they have it in Canada. It's like it's basically like the farther south you are, the lower the number, right? And then if you like go farther and farther out, it goes higher and higher. So like Connecticut would be, I don't know what is it, like a 7 or something. And then if you go farther down, like to whatever, then you'd be at 6 or 5. If you're down in Florida, it's probably like I don't know, 3 or 2 or something. I don't know.
So yeah. The only
Could I answer could I answer one thing that you were saying before you asked me that too? Because you were saying about catching animals, and you heard my arguments before. So one of the things, like when I talk about catching animals, this is a big myth in the paleo diet likes to push, is that they used to run down animals. So that's probably that's the main thing that I would find goofy, is that you would chase.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I definitely agree with you. Now, you have different tribal people. Obviously, we can see different places in Africa versus Asia where there's more of a swimming versus running culture. But for survival and from what I've been taught, yeah, I'm not going to be running down with a stick, you know, using it as a lightsaber, taking down
not even that. They say run it, like they would chase an animal till it was exhausted, and then once it collapses, they would eat it. So that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, that the energy expenditure for that would be insane. And then what you were just saying too, that would not only the energy expenditure for that, but then the risk is not worth it either when you could eat something else.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why if you look at traditional bushcraft, they teach that, you know, obviously you want a snare. You want the animal to already be exhausted by the time that you get to where the animal is going to be in an already compromising situation. So yeah, I would totally agree. But, you know, people always ask every class, I'm sure, because it was asked in my class, what about eating only vegetation? And quite frankly, it's not really possible. It's not feasible. And that's something I wanted to bring up, you know, from obviously my personal experience, and then what's actively taught to people that are expected to live in these situations. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. But I guess you know, back to what I was saying earlier, I do believe that, you know, having a protein diet that does consist of animals is sustainable. And I'm saying this totally not supporting big agriculture. So I kind of want to know what your guys' thoughts and opinions are on that. I kind of think Conscientious Omnivore is already knowing where I'm going with this, based upon some of the stuff I've seen in his channel. But what's your thoughts and opinions on that, and why? Okay.
Well, can I answer your crop zone thing first here?
Yeah,
so
please.
You said, where am I in the world? Like, what's your crop zone? Like, what type? Yeah. You're asking basically what grows here all year round, and is it sustainable for me to eat, like the plants that are around here? Obviously not, because like you know, in the winter there's nothing growing, and it's like cold here at least 6 months out of the year. There's snow, right? So what you're saying is accurate, but like nowadays there's transportation, so we're not living in a time where you can't.
I want to get, and that's actually not the reason why I said that. I mean, it's that for most of us that grow food and depend on the food we grow, that's just a misnomer. The biggest thing is, you know, when I say crop zones, it wasn't for what crops are produced, because that part's really irrelevant, especially if you're talking about, you know, the different gardening things that we have. I have aquaponics back to Eden. I can adjust my environment to produce what I need to produce. I was just because I was talking about the survivalism. I was just talking about edible plants, and if you know what crop zone, if you know, because vegans claim that they're they're environmentalists. So I was just kind of wanting to gauge what what grows around locally, because remember what I said at the beginning. I care about sustainability and preparedness, and that's just where I was going. I just want to know how much you know about what grows, what's edible, what's going on in where you're at, because that's where we're at. It's all different, and that really is going to be the big picture when we're talking about sustainability. Because, like I said, I'm not going to disagree with you guys that, you know, big agriculture is a good thing, and that's kind of where I'm trying to lay the foundation here. So it wasn't because of what foods grow year round, because like I said, I can grow bok choy year round, right? Aquaponics, great, it's there. So that's kind of where I was going with that, not so much, you know, the limitations, because.
I'd like to jump in here for just a minute here. I've actually done a couple of videos kind of touching on this type of subject before. One of them is about kind of the what do you call it? The food preservation. So one aspect of things is that even if like Logan has a really short growing season, it's certainly possible for him to basically grow an abundance of food, grow more than he actually needs during the summer, and then preserve it. So you can dry stuff, you can freeze things, you can salt things, you can pickle things, you can can things. You know, there's just like a number of different things you could do. And a lot of these you can do very environmentally friendly. So either requiring no additional energy beyond just cooking and then canning. You only input that energy once, and then you don't even have to put it in the freezer or the fridge. You can store stuff underground in like little, basement type things where there's like high humidity, like little dirt, cellars and things like that. You can also grow really calorie dense foods like potatoes and squashes and things like that. Those will last months at a time, sometimes even more. Like I've had a butternut squash, last in a basement for 6-7 months, no problem. So there's stuff like that, and then there's grains. Grains last virtually forever. You can dry beans, and those will all grow in like very northern places. So that's one aspect of things that I think a lot of times gets overlooked. And then the other thing that I also want to say is that the farther north you go, the more extreme your summer becomes. So I've actually had a video where I talk about this too. People extend their growing seasons with wali pinis. Those are like underground greenhouses. Those are, again, very cheap, very easy to build, and require very little like energy, like inputs. They work with solar power, and then you could extend your growing season. And in some places, like when you go up to Alaska or northern parts of Canada, you have like super intensive growing seasons in the summer because there's so much daylight. So they have like close to 20 hours of daylight in some parts of Alaska during the summer. And that's where you get these like massive, like monster vegetables where the cabbage is the size of your, half your body and all this kind of stuff. So it's certainly possible to grow vegetables in really extreme places too.
Oh, I agree. Cause like I said, I grow that year round. I guess my biggest question is, why is it not sustainable? Because I think it's more sustainable to have the way nature has it. Animals, plants, they coincide. So I guess my big question is, every time we hear about sustainability, we always want to talk about big agriculture, and that's fine. Because if big agriculture disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't affect me one bit. So I guess my big question is, how is it not sustainable? And then we can talk about that.
So I guess, I mean, there's one thing that I want to ask you. Like, I don't know your specific situation. I don't know, like, how much of a garden you have, what size of land you have, and what kind of animals you're keeping as well. So, the larger land animals definitely require more space. They require more, feed and all this kind of stuff. So, like, are you feeding all your animals from food that you're growing as well? Like, what are you keeping? Are you keeping chickens, ducks, things like that, or bigger things? Did I lose you? Mike? Logan, you're still there, right?
I'm still here. I don't know. He must have, his internet maybe went out or something. Yeah. He's in the garage or something. So,
yeah.
He's got the link. He could hop back in.
Okay. I'm going to check the chat meanwhile and say hi to everybody. Whoa, lots of chatting.
Don't say hi to. There's a couple of losers in there. Don't say hi to them.
Go on, man. Everybody's a winner if they're on, giving us the thumbs up. All right, so yeah, I guess I don't want to like lose my point here with Mike, but I think I just want to wait until he comes back.
He just messaged me saying, "Am I frozen?" I said, "Just try hopping back in." So
yeah.
He'll,
Race Lever had a good comment. He says, "Even squirrels are smart enough to store nuts for the winter. Be smarter than a squirrel, people."
Are you guys there? I'm sorry. I feel like I lost you. Okay, great.
No worries. Cool. You're back. All right. Yeah. So I don't know where you last heard me, but I was just asking, like, what kind of animals are you keeping? Like, do you have small ones or big things?
Small ones. So for me, I'm on about a third of an acre, so I'm not on a ton of property. Now, what I can tell you is my main food source would be rabbits, right? I can and this goes back to the ethical question. So I guess my big question on ethics is, what would be unethical about growing through over 400 pounds of high quality meat, right? That has high omega, high in more protein than beef, virtually no cholesterol, 3% cholesterol. In fact, if you ate nothing but rabbits, the amount of fat that's in the rabbits, you would die, because I would need to supplement with avocados and vegetables. And I can do this using 0 grains, 0 antibiotics, all grass-fed, and I can do it with less environmental impact than 1 gallon of almond milk for a whole year worth of food. And I'm not the first person to do this. Other countries have been doing this for years. People in the homesteading, you know, have been doing this for years. So
yeah,
that's just
I mean,
one
I have,
protein source, you know?
like, I have a European background, and I have uncles and stuff. They've kept chickens and rabbits, and I've helped slaughter them too. So I mean, I think we have a lot in common. Like I know where you're coming from. So that's what I was curious about too, and that's why I asked about the size of your animals, because sometimes people will keep larger animals that they actually can't produce enough food for, and then they import food or buy food. So a lot of people will keep even just like, you know, poultry, you know, hens and ducks and stuff, and they will buy corn or other, you know, feed for them. So I think that was my question to you, was really like what you're looking at as your you know, your kind of like system. So if you're looking at your system as like you're producing all the grass or weeds or everything else that you're probably cutting out of your yard and just feeding to the rabbits, then yeah, it's totally sustainable if there's enough there to feed for the number of rabbits you have. I wouldn't argue that. So I mean, my point is this, like, I wouldn't argue against that as a sustainability thing. It's absolutely sustainable if you have enough, like, you know, green, you know, matter growing in your yard that you can keep those rabbits, and you have zero requirements from the outside. So that's absolutely sustainable. So I wouldn't argue against the sustainability of that. And, you know, what I would argue is just that, you know, that you don't need to kill those rabbits because you could be eating vegetables instead. Fruits and veggies and nuts and seeds and grains and what have you. So that's, I would only argue with you about the ethics, and I would try to convince you that that, you know, it's more ethical to not kill the rabbits. I wouldn't say that it's unsustainable. I wouldn't argue the environmental impacts with you.
And I would disagree on the ethics, because like I said before, when we're talking about ethicals, we're talking about a spectrum. The fact that I can produce enough protein, right, without the grid in 1 year than a vegan would with 1 gallon of almond milk, that's where I want to know where the ethics are, right? Because if we're talking about ethics between me and a vegan, right, I'd really want to know, so especially if we're talking about spectrum, and we'll start getting into oil, and we'll start getting into all this other stuff, I don't have to supplement B12, right? We know where B12 comes from. We know that we know we get it from the soil. And the fact that I'm producing a bunch of prairie grasses because I personally put them, you know, I seeded the lawn, I did everything. So the fact that I'm able, we're looking at this from a spectrum, I'm able to realistically kill less animals than a vegan that has to depend on consumerism, right? Going to the store and buying things. That's where I want to know where the real ethical argument lies. Because I'm not gonna, I'll admit it, the guy that's eating Tyson chicken nuggets and eating processed foods and out there does, you know, like a lot of the people that come on your guys' debate, yeah, I see how it's really easy to toss those people aside. I agree, I would do the same thing. But when we're talking about ethics and we're talking about just purely a consumerism vegan mentality, then yeah, I take issue with that. I guess the biggest thing is the virtue signaling there, right? So you can tell me that, yeah, absolutely, that's unethical because they're sentient animals, and we can talk more about that. But the fact that I can do that with less environmental impact than 1 gallon of almond milk, and we know a lot of vegans like to drink almond milk. I mean, it tastes great. I've tried it before. That's I guess where my biggest argument comes. So we're really going to be talking about ethics, and we're talking about it from a perspective of, well, there's a line here, you know, there's a scale.
Yeah. So Mike, what I would say is don't compare yourself to the chicken McNugget eating guy. Compare yourself to, like, let's clone you and your situation, your yard, your garden, and just take out the animal, you know, inputs, and just do more veggies in their place. And you can, so compare yourself to that person, and that person is definitely more ethical than you. Sure.
I guess I could agree with that, but it's not sustainable, because the rabbits, even if I didn't eat the rabbits, all their waste, everything is recycled. I compost so much, and even with how much I compost, I have 2 90-gallon containers that I compost. I have to make compost tea all the time because I literally don't have enough compost to put on all my plants. And if I didn't have that input, it wouldn't be sustainable. I wouldn't be able to do it. That's what, in nature, Steve, we're talking about.
Yeah, but have you ever looked up human manure?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have.
Do
Absolutely.
you do it? Do you?
Yeah, I mean, if you go on my YouTube channel, I have a composting toilet. I show you how to make it. Absolutely. I agree. But at the same
even
time,
with that, you feel, and with the wood chips, you feel like you're not getting enough like nutrients into your soil. You need the rabbits for the nutrients.
Well, the difference between the human manure, right, versus rabbit manure is rabbit manure you can put directly on without burning the plants. You try doing that with our urine, or you try doing it with your own manure or feces.
Well, I realize you need breakdown time, or you need to compost it hot and all this kind of stuff. There is a process.
And if I were to go out and do just completely plant-based, I would still need to supplement with B12, which would mean that I would have to buy a product that is created with oil, transported with oil, packaged in oil. I have to drive my oil power car to an oil power store that's powered by oil. And so you're looking at all these inputs. To me, that's not sustainable, because sustainability is, if I can't depend on that, can I do it here? The answer is yes.
Well, I don't know if you've seen it, but there have been actually a bunch of studies where they've shown that B12 is like proven to be like taken up by certain types of plants. I forget which one it is. I'll have to look because it was in my Twitter feed, but somebody had posted this like really remarkable study. They basically did like I don't know if it was like a radioactive isotope or something, but they somehow marked the B12 that they put in the soil. And then they planted, I don't know if it was bok choy or something else, but it was some type of green. It may have been like a mustard green or something. And it was shown that it was being transported into the actual part that you would eat.
The only thing I've seen on that is duckweed. I grow duckweed here as well, because in the wintertime when I can't produce all the grasses and stuff, I have enough grass as far as, you mill it, make it to pellets, right? But making sure that protein content, I do produce duckweed here as well in my aquaponic systems for that. So I believe duckweed is what they've been trying to do. It hasn't been successful yet. But I don't know if it's the same one. I don't know if it's the same one.
The point is though that like if you're doing the kind of gardening we're talking about, occasionally just eating some of the dirt by mistake, from just like not washing your fruits and veggies a little bit, you could theoretically get enough. I'm not recommending that, because I think again, there are some other pathogens you might be getting that you shouldn't. You don't want to get like stomach virus or something. But but I'm just saying, like, from a sustainability standpoint, we used to get enough B12 theoretically from just groundwater, and basically probably the dirt and the little odd bug here and there that might stay on your food if it wasn't washed like 100% thoroughly. But again, like, are we we also have to look at like what 99.9% of the people are going to be doing. Like, I'm encouraging people to do more gardening, and it sounds like you are as well, like when you're talking to people. But if from a sustainability standpoint, my point has always been this: if everybody did what you say you're doing, then we almost wouldn't be here as a movement, like the vegan movement, because there wouldn't be the environmental damage, the climate change, all this kind of stuff, and even the ethics of it would be completely different than it is. But the fact is that 99.9% of the people aren't doing what you're doing. They are not doing what I'm doing. People aren't growing their own food. People are just like contributing to this big mess. And I think if we got everybody to where you are, like, and then we talk about the ethics, then that's a different story. But most people aren't there. Most people are somewhere, like you were saying, like the chicken McNugget eating guy.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. Like I said, if we're gonna, and that's the biggest thing, because usually when I talk to people about veganism, and I'm glad this when I saw you that you were going to be on this, I was super excited, because like I said, I do follow a lot of the stuff you do, and I think we're very similar. Not identical, but we're very similar, and so it was good to see that you were going to be here. But yeah, I think that when we're talking about veganism, like I said, I think that if you want to do that, that's totally fine. I guess the biggest thing that I have, like I said, I'm pretty much a live and let live kind of guy. It's just, I guess when we talk about ethics, we always go off. I always see these tangents that are drawn, and if we're really talking about a spectrum, and I'm sure we'll all agree that we all have some kind of impact on the world. It's just about what that impact is and how much it is. I remember Logan was talking about littering, right? And so that's the real reason why I reached out to him the way I did, just because he had said something about, well, littering, you shouldn't litter because it affects other people, right? And then I'm thinking, okay, I see vegans drink almond milk, and this is the effect almond milk has. I know how big agriculture is used and how we use the petrochemicals. And we talk about carcinogens, but yet we're dumping fertilizer carcinogens on plants and growing them. And then we start talking about how much plant content is reduced by transportation. And then we talk about the fact that an orange grown today has 1/8 the nutrients that it grew with our grandparents. That has to do with these practices. So I see that and I'm just like, well, how do you justify that? You know, because if everyone wanted to go eat organic overnight, we can't. I don't know if you know what the biggest organic farm in the Northern Hemisphere is. It's Cal Farms, and they're 25,000 acres. Canadian tar sands alone strip 65,000 acres a year. So when we're talking about sustainability, even if we were to try to take all the arable land and switch it to eat plants, and I'd love to go down this rabbit hole with you, I just don't think that's sustainable. And we can talk about it, and I'm way open. I've heard the facts. I've heard what the statistics are, but I'm really curious, because me personally, I think grains are bad. I'm not a grain person, but we can talk about that too. But yeah, that's just that's where I come from. You know, when I see, oh, this vegan's drinking almond milk, but I'm the bad guy for, you know, having a smaller carbon footprint. Okay. And that's where I come from.
Well, I mean, you know, again, the almond milk thing, you compare that to like dairy milk, and you'll see that it's a small fraction of the water required and the energy required and everything. So,
right.
you know, it's like, but what are you, so yeah, you have to look at what are you comparing it to? You know, the vegan drinking the almond milk is still, you know, by and far, like far better than the person drinking the dairy milk, even if it is like, you know, organic or whatever.
Right. Organic culture's bad.
Yeah. So like, I don't think that's really like, you know, all that important. You can make your own, you know, almond milk. You can make your own other kinds of milks too. You can make it from seeds. You can make it from grains at home. It's super easy. You just put it in a blender with water, and then you strain it through a cloth. You don't even have to throw away the pulp. I use it usually whatever I make, you know, plant milks at home. I take the pulp and I bake it into breads and stuff, or put it into pastries or muffins or whatever, you know, people want to bake, or put it into pancakes. So, you know, you can lower.
I couldn't agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, you can lower your impact even further, you know, as a vegan, you know, compared to a vegan who's just buying, you know, store-bought everything. But again, you know, you're comparing, you know, what to what. So if you're comparing it to animal agriculture, it's still like significantly lower. That's, and if you're in agreement there, that's fine. You know, and I want to go back. I want to go back to this thing of, you know, you're saying like, okay, so you need the B12, and and for that you need to go to the store and whatever. But what other things do you go to the store for? I mean, you didn't make that shirt, you didn't make the garage door behind you, or what have you. Right. So, I mean, like, yeah, you do have to have some reliance on other people. I love this idea of being more self-sufficient, but to be 100% reliant, that's not really, you know, practical, you know, and especially not for somebody who we're on YouTube, we're like talking through a webcam and what have you.
Real powered, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like we have to keep these kinds of things in perspective, and and I think really like the B12 really is the only, you know, true supplement that is recommended to take, like, you know, for everyone. But that is there for people consuming an omnivorous diet as well. Some people just don't get enough. You know, in your situation, your animals eating, you know, probably grass and getting some dirt and whatever, they probably are, you know, getting enough B12. So by consuming them, you know, you're most likely getting enough without a doubt. But, you know, again, I would just go back to the ethics of just looking at it from the perspective of the rabbit. Like, is you not getting a B12 because of like this concern that like you have to drive to the store to get it, and it was made with, you know, some kind of energy input and probably some kind of fossil fuel involved at some point down the road, with, you know, some type of impact to the world. Is that like worth like the life of that animal? Like, you have to look at it from that perspective. Like, from the rabbit's perspective, like he's not gonna agree with you.
No, I can't tell you that I totally agree with you on that. But you have to remember, as prepster, right? Prepper, homesteader, I'm not here to change I can't change the world. What I do believe in is changing communities one backyard at a time. And I would think that a lot of us do agree with that perspective. Absolutely. I guess the biggest, like I said, I have no problem with anybody being vegan. I think it's great. But when we're talking about sustainability and we're talking about our dependence on things, I'm coming from the ideology of what I know from other countries. I'm talking about what I know from myself based on my cultures, things happen all the time. And if something happens, right, and I can't depend on that, sustainability is I can do it here. I can feed my family here. I can do that here. And so as far as environmentalism, like I said, I love the fact that vegans think that they're environmentalists because they're consumerism, which is why we're in this situation that we're in currently right now anyway, is because of consumerism. So I think it's just the parallels drawn that I'm a vegan, right? So I'm not, but I'm a vegan. I go to the store. I buy products. I buy plants that are created with class 1 carcinogens that are dumped on them. They're packaged in plastic, all this stuff, right? It all comes back to oil. So it's just, I guess, the virtue signaling, that's the biggest thing. But yeah, we can talk about, I can still be better. I still try every day to be better, but I don't see taking away the food source as a way to be more sustainable. Maybe ethical, sure, if we want to go that way. I don't think it's unethical. That's just my personal opinion. But as far as ethics go, if we're talking about, remember the scale, right? Yeah, I would say I'm much more ethical than most vegans.
You know, like here, because you know, I think we do have similar views on this. That like, you know, I like to be prepared too, and I like to. My pantry's always stocked, right? Like, you know, you never know what happens, and this doesn't have to be like geopolitical craziness. Like a couple winters back, we had this crazy ice storm where I live here, and the road out of the village was blocked off for 3 days. You couldn't come in or out. Like nobody could come in or out, and we didn't have power. So, you know, 3 days, like I couldn't get to work, you know, all this kind of stuff. And yeah, we had no problem. I mean, like we had alternate heat, and we had, you know, like plenty of food, like no problem. You know, so we were fine. We would probably be fine, honestly, for 2-3 weeks, no problem. Like I wouldn't even really feel it. I would be like, oh man, I don't have bananas. Okay, well, tough. You know, like I would still be fine. But my point is this, like you know, like if you were doing a vegan diet and the only thing you need is a B12, and you're talking about like, okay, what happens? Some political event, some geopolitical event, something bad happens, some kind of situation happens, and now you can no longer go and bike down to the store and pick up your B12 tablets. Yeah. Well, then okay, you can address it at that point. You can go and, you know, if you need to, because you're feeling like, oh my God, my B12, you know, stores are drawing down. Like I'm going to go kill a frog, like in the pond down the street. I guess I would do that if I had to, but I mean, we're so far away from that kind of a situation. I mean, like you could do what you're suggesting at that point, because you're talking about a spectrum. Like wait until you get to the part of the spectrum where you are actually feeling like it's a life or death kind of situation, or you don't have to wait that far, but like when you feel like it's getting there. I mean, like right now you're talking to us on the internet, like you're in no danger of not being able to get a B12 tablet.
Right. No, I'm not saying that I couldn't depend on an oil powered society to do that. What I'm saying is, could there be ways that we could cut our carbon footprint? Yes. But when we're talking about ethics, I want to talk about, I mean, we can talk about ethics of individual things, but when it comes to, like I said, I'm not here to tell you I'm an environmentalist. Now, based upon my dedication to preparedness and sustainability, the byproduct of that is me being way more sustainable and way more ethical than most vegans. I have no problem. I mean, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, because I would never virtue signal, and I don't care about the environmentalism in the perspective of a consumer-based ideology, right? I go to the store and you know, that's what I'm saying. But as far as like the B12 and everything, if you're saying that I need to try to change everything, and then somehow if something bad happens, like what we're seeing in South America, what we're seeing in Cuba, you know, what we're seeing in Venezuela, and then all of a sudden that's when, okay, let's go find this frog, honey. No, I'd say that's a bit of a stretch. I think that there's ways that we can come together. But if we're talking about being ethical, just because.
Okay, but sorry to finish up for just a second. So keep your rabbits as pets, and don't kill them until you need them.
But doesn't that go against veganism as well? Still, because
but it's a life and death situation. You feel, you know, you can't get to the store anymore. You can't buy your B12. Now you need to kill the rabbit.
Well, the way I look at it is, and this is from my ethical perspective, that is my supplement. So you're talking about supplementing B12. That rabbit right there in the corner, that rabbit right there is my supplement. Versus I'm going to ship a supplement from somewhere across the world using all that energy and using all that consumer-based capitalistic hurt and damage that happens to bring it to my house. Which one's more ethical? Like literally, it's right here.
What if you buy like a locally sourced B12? Why can't they make the B12 in your city, in your town?
Oh, you're right. They absolutely can. So we're talking about, so I go someplace, they have to hire workers. Those workers drive in oil power cars. There's 4 gallons of oil in every tire. They have to keep the electricity on using fossil fuels. So if we're really talking about, you know, like I said, that's where I'm still.
Do you have a job? Or do you just? Yeah. No, so you need a job too, right?
Absolutely.
Because you need disposable income.
Right.
Like for doing stuff. I don't know.
Right.
I mean, so how does that change the guy who's making the B12 locally down the street? It's a job.
If it was made locally, not down the street, right? Like I said, I don't know. I haven't went in.
Well, I'm just saying. Or why don't I mean? Like, yeah, because we can argue for that. Yeah, we can ask people to do that. Like make B12 local.
Sure, absolutely. So the cost, virtually free, right? Because they eat grass and everything. But you want me to pay money that I could be going to other sustainable items to purchase a supplement that was created with all this oil, packaged with all this oil. And that's where it comes down. Because at the end of the day, if something happens and I can't work anymore, I guess the biggest difference is I'm still going to be able to, compare to most vegans, I'm still going to be able to grow and eat fresh, organic vegetables and animals. And I'm not dependent. I have solar. I have all these things, right? So if I needed to downscale and survive, or downscale and be, you know, if I was forced, hey, you have to be the most economically friendly you can, I can still do that eating meat and be way more ethical than most vegans. And I guess that's the thing, because when we're talking about veganism, it's always coming down to ethics, right? So that is my supplement. That's it. That impact is way less than what commercialism will give you with veganism. It's just,
Can I jump in for 1 sec?
Yeah, go ahead, Logan.
Okay, so I mean, not everybody can grow fruits and vegetables, obviously, the way cities are constructed, and you're kind of, you know, you'd be a rare case even in Thunder Bay, where there's lots of people who have farms like all over the place. It would still be rare for you to be growing all this stuff in the city, right? And so when a truck gets a shipment and brings it to a store, it's not like just for that one person. It's a truck filled with things, right? So it's not like they're just shipping that one B12 for you and it's using all sorts of energy for your one B12 thing that you're having to get, right? And I would agree with you that, you know, if the world was a perfect place, it would all be permacultures. There would be no cars. There would be like some kind of people mover thing, and, you know, everything would be environmentally friendly and great. And I think the starting point is always veganism, because you can just plainly see that if you have an animal and the animal eats plants, or you have plants, which one takes more resources? Obviously, the animal is eating plants all the time, right? So, I mean, let's say your animal, let's say your animal eats food. Where does the food come from?
Right, absolutely. And I guess my question to you would be, if we're talking about small scale animals, if you're talking about the fact that a chicken can take non-edibles or something that you wouldn't eat, and ticks, insects, and they're able to transport this into a highly powerful food item. A rabbit can take weeds that I'm not going to eat, take grasses that I can't digest the same way they can, and give me my B12 that I need. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. What's more ethical? If you're talking about
what does your animal eat though? Like, you didn't answer the question. So your animals, what do they eat?
They're grass fed.
Okay, so all your animals just only eat grass?
Do you know anything about rabbits? What do you think rabbits eat?
Oh, I didn't know you only had rabbits. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay,
I didn't hear that you only have rabbits.
So grass, right? The way we look at grass, not we, but most traditional people, they just look at basic turf grass, like what you see outside. But you have lots of different kinds of grasses, right? I personally think if we want to change climate change, we need to go to more grass prairie type environments, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, you take timothy, alfalfa, you take all these different types of perennial grasses, and you can grow them. You can grow them locally because they're seeds, and you can put them on your lawn and use compost tea and stuff, and you water them. And I don't really have to water them because I get 30 inches of annual rain, so I'm pretty much good in that aspect. But yeah, and they grow. And I have a lithium battery based lawnmower, which hurts the environment. But I mow the lawn. I charge that using solar. I take that, I can put it into a machine I also power with my solar generator. It makes pellets, and I can give it to them, and that's going to give them everything they need. I produce crops that they can also eat, weeds that they also eat, and that's all done in less than half an acre, and that's
okay. So let's say you were the one example of like the guy who's got it completely figured out that you found this way to not use. No, hold on. Let's say you and 5 other people, whatever it is,
right.
You found this way to not use any resources besides buying the seeds that you had to go somewhere and buy and whatever else, and Okay, so I mean, there are certain things you did have to buy. Let's just say that this is somewhat decent. So for the whole rest of the world, besides that, you shouldn't eat any animal products.
Well, what I'm saying is, you're telling me because you do something and not everyone else can do it because it's hard, just like being vegan for some people is hard. Just because I do it, it's somehow, just because the rest of the world can't do it, I'm supposed to come up with a solution for it. I mean, we can start small.
Okay.
We can start small. You can produce a ton of food if you started doing aquaponics. You could produce a ton of food, and that environmental impact would be way less than you going to the store and buying it. And that would make you way more ethical. So the options are there. It's just, do you want to do it? Yeah, it's hard. It's rough. Anybody that has started a back-to-eating garden, and I'm sure he can tell us, and I can tell you, soil restoration, all this stuff is a hard process. It's not easy. But is it worth it? Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, bro. But you have to decide if you're going to do it or not. And I know most people aren't going to do it, and that's fine. 85% of vegans revert back to the diet they had before. And I know it's a battle, and it's not easy. But what I'm saying is,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Let me just jump in. So this whole kind of argument is kind of like you're trying to argue what's the most perfect thing for the environment, basically, right? So I mean that's a bad place to start, because that's unreasonable for that's unreasonable for anybody to be like, I have to do everything perfect for the environment, because that would entail them quitting their job, giving away their car, doing everything, moving out into the woods, doing all these things. And you're saying like, well, I'm doing this, so now I can reject veganism because now I'm living, on a farm or something, right? So I mean, that's like to have this conversation isn't really a conversation about veganism. We're trying to argue here who's the most sustainable environmental wise, really, right? So I mean, we could say.
I told you I wasn't.
Should I move to the woods?
I don't live in the woods. You can, sure. I mean, it's Canada. You guys have a lot of it there. Go for it. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. But all I was saying with that is this idea of a consumer-based environmentalism is somehow the golden ticket to saving the planet. I think we got to talk. And I guess the next thing that I'll bring up, because I know I'm pretty sustainable. Like, I'm sure you guys are sustainable. I'm sure you guys grow a lot of your own food and stuff. But it's this argument. If everybody, I will not eat plants that were grown in level 1 carcinogen fertilizer. I just won't do it. I know I'm not the only person that says that. But if everybody wanted to go organic tomorrow, it's not possible. Vegans want to talk about how we take all the crops that we feed to big animal agriculture, and somehow that'll feed the nation. I'm sorry, corn, wheat, and soy is not going to give you all the nutrition that you need, and that's grown using petrochemicals. So if
I don't those same lands that grow those corn, wheat, and soy, and grow other stuff on it.
Sure. Do they use petroleum-based food products? Level 1 carcinogens? Do they dump that on there? Because if that's the case, I'm sorry. If that's the right answer, I don't want any part of it.
No. See, I mean, I think there's a couple things that need to be clarified. One is like, are you eating anything that you don't grow yourself, or know for sure is grown in this kind of sustainable way?
Me personally, yes, because of the area that I'm in. That's super easy to do. Absolutely. I know where it comes from. My rabbits, I know exactly. I know their parents. I know the lady that breeds them. They're sired. They're pedigreed. My food, I know where I go where it's grown. I can see it. It's there. But then again, that's. So
you never eat out though. You don't go to like a restaurant. You don't like go to a friend's house, like to, I don't know, have a birthday party or something.
Sure. I'm not saying that I don't. But if we're gonna take, like I said, we're taking the spectrum of what's ethical. All I'm saying is there are meat eaters that are way more ethical than a lot of vegans, especially a vegan that's based upon consumerism.
Well, here,
Okay.
there's another thing that you brought up at the beginning. You mentioned intention, right? So, like, the intention of
By
you,
definitions, yeah.
yeah, getting like a TV that is made from plastic and has like God knows whatever in it, heavy metals and what have you. The intention is not to like harm the environment or people or animals or whatever. With you, the intention is to kill the rabbit. So you are intending to harm the rabbit. With the person who's buying the B12 at the store, they may be causing some suffering or some kind of like harm to the environment or animals or people down the line, but that's not the intention. So that's what the argument about the ethics revolves around as well.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And if that's the argument, and I have no problem coming to this conclusion. If the argument is I'm not intending to cause more damage to the environment, but I am, and that's morally superior in your opinion, cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Fine. No. See, no, I haven't said that you have caused more harm to the environment, because you're talking about like a theoretical scenario as well. Because for most people, your like living situation is only a theoretical scenario. They can't do what you're doing, and for the purpose of like a theoretical argument and a scenario, I can just as well say that the B12 is produced by your neighbor down the street. Like, so you're kind of like choosing arbitrarily to give us like one scenario that fits you, but doesn't fit 99% of the world. But then when I say, oh, here's this other scenario that could equally fit you and 99% of the world, you're like, well, that's only theoretical. It doesn't exist.
Well, I'm not saying that. I can concede that, yes, if I wanted to go get.
Okay, so if your neighbor made B12 supplements, like, and you could just buy it from him, just literally walk to your edge of your property and he could hand it to you, like, would you go vegan then?
Would I go vegan then? No. The reason why I wouldn't go vegan then is because, well, I mean, I guess I could be. I'm going to say no, because the reason why I have the animals, like I said before, if I'm going to do something, I guess I'd do it all the way. I would still have the animals. I am ready for sustainability and preparedness. So if my neighbor somehow produces B12, good for them. But if something happens and my neighbor can
okay. So let me change the scenario. You can produce your own B12. You have a rainwater catchment system. You have a little pond, and the bacteria in the soil, like near the pond, definitely produces the B12. And you have some kind of way that, like at home, at your own convenience, you can filter that water and make sure you're not getting any pathogens, but you are getting the B12. So all you do is you just drink a liter of that water, and you got your B12. Would you go vegan then?
You're saying in a hypothetical world that doesn't exist, if I could.
Well, no, it certainly exists. I mean, the soil contains the bacteria that makes the B12. So I'm just saying that you have a way that you can just get the B12 out of the water in the little pond that you use rainwater to fill.
I will concede. I know where you're going with this, and I'll concede this point. Like I said, I don't know what religious, if there is any here in this circle, and that's fine. But if we were to believe that the Garden of Eden somehow was this real thing, and they were somehow able to eat and coincide with animals, and everything was great and blissful, I'm all about that, man. Yes, absolutely, no doubt. Let's do it. If we could go to this hypothetical Garden of Eden where God loves us and we have all animals coinciding together and we can do, I would absolutely. Garden of Eden sounds pretty awesome. So yeah, in that aspect, we could totally do that. Now, is that a pretty big hypothetical? Yeah. Is that the world we live in? No. But yeah, hypothetically speaking, sure. Yeah, I would live in the Garden of Eden and I wouldn't eat animals because God.
Okay, I'll dig up that article like afterward, and I'll link it below about the B12 that's transported into the green, because that is certainly something that people are working on, and if they can do it, I mean it can easily be replicated. So if somebody just tells you, look, this is the plant you need to grow and you'll get all your B12, just eat this lettuce, whatever it is.
I'd have to set aside, I'd have to grow a lot of it, and I would have to hope that there wasn't a bad crop season.
No, because you need an incredibly small amount of B12. And it's even arguable, like, whether or not, like, just, people really need the supplementation or not. I think it's more just to be super, super duper sure.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I take a B12 supplement, I get a tablet, chewable. Again, like, I think, you're kind of like conflating two different things. You're like saying that it's inherently like more unsustainable to get a B12 than, you know, to keep the rabbits. I mean, are you looking at everything? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You have to house the rabbits. You have to like make some kind of housing for them. You know, you rattled off like 3 things that you need: your lawnmower, you need your like
I don't need a
solar panel charging thing.
It's easier, yeah, it's easier, sure.
But again, you know, this is what I'm saying. Like, there are other things too. Like, are you really looking at every single input? And like Logan said, like, you're going to the store for other stuff. If you break your window, like, you're gonna go to the store and like get it replaced. Like,
sure. And if you're talking about the going to the store argument, go ahead.
Yeah, let me say something for 1 second. So, I mean, this whole argument is kind of like it goes nowhere because, like, it's a really bad starting point. Because I thought you were just going to talk about like the basics, like, you know, using up resources for animal agriculture, stuff like that. And like, you can't argue. Well, you can't argue with somebody about who's, you know, like who has more of an environmental impact, because that's going to be impossible to figure out. Like, am I going to go count every appliance in my house right now and then go like count how many plants in my backyard and add up everything? It's going to be impossible to figure out who's actually doing more damage. And it basically is, hold on. So basically what this comes down to is just like an appeal to futility argument. Like, it's either kind of like, you know, if you're doing any environmental impact, then, you know, it's okay for me to do all this environmental impact, and it's really hard to figure out who's actually doing more. So this goes nowhere. So it's like, the way I see it is like, we talk about, you know, either ethics or health or, you know, both of those. And then you could just tell easily that overall animal agriculture and feeding animals takes more resources than just eating what the animals would be eating, or planting something in the place of where the animals would be eating.
Yeah, like I said, I totally disagree with you there. Like I said, we want to we're talking about ethics, right? We're talking about killing less animals, having less environmental impact. If that's not relevant to what we're talking about, fine, cool. I mean, but
it's a number you can't determine, though. It's a number that you can't determine. Like, so, like, you can determine picking up a knife and stabbing an animal. It's very hard to determine who's actually killing more animals based on fossil fuels, me or you. Like, that's going to be hard to figure out.
Okay. So would you say that a consumerist vegan, somebody that majority of vegans go to the store, buy plant products that are packaged in oil, produced in oil, which is a level 1 carcinogen, fertilizer is. So if we're going to talk about all this, do they have less environmental impact than somebody like me? And there's a lot of us. Somebody like me. I guess that would be my biggest question. And if the answer is yes, they do, well, then I guess, you know, this part of ethics is over, because if that's what you both agree, I'm not going to change your mind. I'm just saying,
so that's not what. No, so that's not what I agree. So
okay, I mean, that's fine.
Okay, so you're removing basically like the transportation and the fertilizer thing, and saying, well, my plants are better and my animals are better, and both those combined are better than these certain type of plants. Well, if we took away the animals that you were using and you were just using the growing of the plants, then that person would have better ethics than you. You just removing the animals from plants and growing system always ends up better than having the animals.
Okay, so I don't know where we're going with that. I guess back to my last question. Is it which one's more ethical? 1 gallon of almond milk and how that's produced versus how many rabbits I can grow an entire year for 1 gallon? I mean, and that's really what I'm asking, because that's just.
But who says you have to drink almond milk?
That's okay.
Who says you have to drink almond milk?
Yeah, but you're just arbitrarily picking one type of thing. Like I could do that too. I could be like, well, what's worse? 1 chicken McNugget or like 50 gallons of palm oil? Like, what we're just arbitrarily picking things?
Well, if we're talking about deforestation, transportation, and we're talking about all these other things, then yeah, I think that would be pretty. Like I say, if you can't concede the lifestyle difference, if you really think that consumer-based veganism is somehow better than somebody that actually goes out of the way to reduce their carbon footprint in the way that I and many other people do, and we're talking about ethics on a spectrum, then that's fine. I won't even, it's two on one. If that's what you agree, then that's fine. I mean, I think that's kind of ridiculous. Anybody with common sense would see that, but that's fine. And like I said, it is what it is, right? It is what
Mike,
it is.
if there were a lot of people doing what you're saying you're doing, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be talking about this. There wouldn't be an issue. Most people use the types of arguments you're making to justify their horrific, like, bad behaviors and just allow them to keep doing it with a clear conscience. Most people go to the store and buy the $20 a pound, grass-fed beef one time a month, and then they use that to, like, clear their conscience for the rest of the month. The other, whatever, 120 meals that they have, because, oh, no, I usually buy grass-fed. I usually buy whatever. Like, you're talking about, like, you not being a consumer, when you're talking about your own food production, but you don't realize that, like, most people aren't doing what you're doing.
And I'm not
let me give you an example about what you're doing. So this is what you're doing. So let's say I moved to the tropics, right? Or I just lived in the tropics my whole life. So I say to you, well, what's more ethical? Me living under this tree by myself in the bush, picking fruit from this tree and taking a crap on this tree, and then I pick more fruit, or what you're doing, right?
Well,
and these are things that not everybody's doing, but we're just
yeah, and I would say he's way more ethical. I'd have no problem conceding that point if that's what they were truly doing.
So what's the solution, though? Are you going to go move to the tropics now and go live under a tree?
No, because like I said before, my number one goal is not environmentalism. I don't know how many times I have to say I don't like big agriculture, and I'm not here to save the environment. I come from a sustainability, and I come from a preparedness mindset. That's what I'm talking about. But when we're talking about ethics, when we're talking about, like I established with you in the beginning already, we're talking about a scale. We're talking about a spectrum. And we're talking about most damage versus not most damage. And we need to talk about all these issues in totality. Because at the end of the day...
You missed my point, though. You missed my point. So I just showed you how a vegan is more ethical than you by living under a tree. And I'm saying, well, what's the solution then? Like, because you have no solution to what you're saying. You're just trying to prove that you're more ethical or something because you have a farm.
If you're using ethics as a veganism argument, then yeah, you have to look at it, because not all.
Okay, so I just used your own argument, and I showed you how a vegan is more ethical that lives in the tropics. So what does that mean?
Well, if we're talking about ethics, if you're a vegan and you're not as ethical as somebody else, you can't use the ethical argument against them just because somebody else.
But you can, because because the point that if you look at the definition of veganism, is you try to limit the amount of, like, intentional harm that you were doing to animals, whenever practical and what it was, I always forget Logan, help me out there with what is it? Practical
as far as possible and practicable. So
yes, thank you.
It's basically saying whatever in, like, reason, because, like, say, like, you go buy plants and you're not sure, maybe a harvester or something, but you got to eat or something. You're going to pick the most ethical thing that you can at that choice, whatever, like, practicable and possible for your situation. So it is, you can move to the tropics, but I mean, that's completely unreasonable for me to say you have to move to the tropics and go live under a tree. And it's completely unreasonable for you to say everybody needs to go live like me in the bush with rabbits.
I never.
Well, then there's no argument. Then there's no argument. Then.
What do you mean?
Right?
No, because we're talking about ethics, and all I'm trying to say is we're not
talking about ethics.
Fine. Well, I will say I'll just leave it at this statement. I, as a meat eater, am way more ethical than most vegans, based upon the totality of situation and understanding of how the consumerism based culture of how most vegans live. And if there's vegans out there, which there are a lot of them, I'm sure, that have a way smaller footprint than me, good for them.
Yeah.
They can.
So let me show you how this is not about ethics, and we're just basically appealing to futility about who's more environmentally sustainable. So this is a good segue into the next conversation. So I'm a vegan, right? Or say Conscientious Omnivore is a vegan, right? And I'm a guy who lives in the woods, who grows his own plants, but I have human slaves that I make eat my grass, and then I stab them, right, when they're done.
Sure.
Who's more ethical, me or Conscientious Omnivore?
Well, I think killing human beings is horrible. So yeah, I'd say that would be very.
So that's worse.
Kill humans?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know we agree because here's the thing: I've heard you say it already that there's a difference between a human life and there's a difference between an animal life, and if we're going to change that now, then let me know. But yeah, I think that if you had a bunch of slaves and you're killing them, that's bad. And we can talk semantics. I don't have a bunch of human slaves that number one, I don't live in the woods. I don't know why we keep going with that argument or saying that, but that's fine. I live anyway, so. Yeah, I don't have a bunch of.
Let me finish the thought though too. So sure. Okay, so you just said mine was less ethical than his. He's the vegan. He goes to the grocery store. He buys all the things with fossil fuels and environmentally damaging products and everything. Those kill humans. So it's the same argument as yours. Those other things, those fossil fuels, all those other things kill animals. But you have rabbits, but for some reason yours is more ethical. But, the same thing for me. Like, I got some human slaves, but I'm more ethical because I don't have fossil fuels that kill other humans, right? Through the environment.
That makes absolutely no sense. But yeah, I mean, human slavery is bad, and I don't do human slavery, and to conflate the two is a bit ridiculous. But no, I think that's horrible. Absolutely.
Okay. Can you answer why you think human slavery is bad?
I think enslaving humans is bad. Yeah, I'd say most people would agree with that. And I've seen where this conversation goes.
I agree with you. It is bad.
I've watched a bunch of. I didn't kind of know what's going next. But yeah, let's talk about human slavery. I'm excited. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, but I mean, so if you agree that it's bad, so I think we agree that it is bad, and we would say that it's bad because you wouldn't want it done to yourself. So it's the golden rule, ultimately, right? Like you want to be treated the way, you want to treat other people the way you want to be treated. That's the golden rule in its essence. So, the question becomes, why is it okay to enslave animals when it's not okay to enslave people? And inherently, there must be some difference between them that you think it's okay to do it to an animal.
Yeah, I definitely think that there is a huge difference between humans and animals. And I think it's funny because I watched another debate where Logan was talking about how he would eat an insect if it was on a plant instead of putting it outside or just brushing it off, but yet he won't pick one up and eat it. So we're talking about things that, if we're talking about this type of ideology, then yeah, I'm willing to go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. Yeah, I don't think rabbit lives and human lives are the same.
I didn't say that, but I'm just saying that there's some difference. Yeah, but there's some difference that you're using to justify making it okay to do that to a rabbit. So I'm asking you, what quality is in the rabbit that makes it okay to do it to the rabbit that isn't in people?
Well, I can tell you.
Or you could ask it the other way around too. Like, what's in people that isn't in rabbits?
I can tell you what's in the rabbit. Yeah, I can tell you what's in the rabbit. Really good protein, B12. Riboflavin, calcium.
There's all of those things in people. There's all of those things in people. There's all of those things in people.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there isn't. This is small. It's easy. I can do it. It's something that is sustainable. And
kids are really small too.
Kids are really small too. Humans is not sustainable, bro. I don't know. I mean, it's not. I mean, if you look at slavery. I mean, even slavery in general is not sustainable.
No, because you just kind of like conceded Logan's point there. Because what if he was keeping human slaves and doing the same thing you're suggesting? Well, and what if it was sustainable? If you're only looking at sustainability, looking at sustainability as the ground of the ethics, then you could literally do what he said. You would just need more than a third of an acre. Maybe if you had 10 acres, you could grow enough food that you could feed it to like human babies, and then you could kill them and eat them.
Well, you can't do that scientifically. It doesn't work that way. You can't feed human beings. You can't feed human beings perennial grasses and expect to get the same vitamin and nutrients.
I'm saying you have enough land. I'm saying you have enough land. No, I'm saying you have enough land that you can feed them like human food. You can grow enough corn and squash and beans and potatoes and everything else that you want, and you're feeding it to people, and then you can kill them and eat them for the B12.
Well, like I said, that's not a very sustainable practice, and the amount of time it takes from gestation to maturity, and then more.
But
well, no, it's like I said.
Let's say you have enough land, and you can do it. And the point is that the sustainability is not what makes it ethical or not. That's the exact point.
I never said that is what I never said that is what makes.
That's been your argument from the very beginning. You've been saying what's more ethical, the vegan buying the B12, which needs like the petrochemicals to make it and transport it, versus you eating the rabbits. That's been your argument since the very beginning.
And that's true. But if you were to add human being slaves and feed them perennial grasses, you're not going to get the same output, and that's wrong.
But I'm not feeding them. In my hypothetical scenario, I'm not feeding them grasses. I'm feeding them potatoes and beans. And
and I'm not. And here's the thing: I'm not going to sit here and go through these backward gymnastics of human slavery, because I think human slavery is bad. I personally have relatives that were in concentration, like the intermittent camps, Executive Order 9066, when FDR put them in intermittent camps. So yeah, personally, I can tell you, knowing these people, I think that's wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong. It's horrible. It's horrible, and it's horrible. It's horribly wrong.
And for you to conflate rabbits to the human lives of these people is completely ridiculous. That's wrong.
You're taking a living being that wants to live, and you're putting him in a cage, and then you're killing him and eating him.
Well, they do free grades a lot. But yeah, it's an animal.
But it's equally as wrong. That's the whole point.
Just like other omnivores.
It's equally as wrong.
So is it wrong for other omnivores to eat animals? Because we're all animals.
Animals don't have moral agency like humans do.
Yeah, and you know what that science is called?
Tell me.
Anthropomorphism, basically the attribution of human characteristics. I mean, so if you're saying that we're all animals, somehow I can't. I'm just saying, if you're saying somehow that I'm an animal like they're an animal, but I can't do what other animals do and eat food and consume food for my nutrition, then fine.
That's not what I'm saying. I think you're trying to.
If it's wrong for a chimpanzee, if it's wrong for me to do it, but not for a chimpanzee to do it, or for any other omnivore to do it, then fine. Just say that. Just say it's wrong for a human to do it, and it's not wrong for the other omnivores. And cool. If that's your opinion, that's fine. I have no problem conceding that.
You're missing the point here. The point is that humans have moral agency. Animals, other animals don't. So that's one thing. And I'm not saying that you are the same as the rabbit, and I'm not saying that it's that there isn't some kind of like that there's a moral equivalency between the two, like between your ancestors getting enslaved and imprisoned and what have you. That's absolutely not the case. What I'm saying is it's the things that we're similar in animals is that we feel, is that they suffer, and that is enough to make me not want to do that to them.
Okay,
it's that simple. Fine. That's the commonality, and that's enough to make me not want to cause them suffering. And you're telling me that you can be healthy except for the B12. That's all you need. Then you could just go to the store when you're going to the store already, because you're already going to the store. You're already going to the store. You're not 100% off grid, and you're not 100% totally living your own life and never need any input and help from any other human being. So you're already doing that, and all you have to do is, when you've already picked up some other item from the shelf, you just pick up a B12 too.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It's not just the B12. Like I said, rabbits have amazing nutrition.
They also have cholesterol, and I just looked up. You said that they don't have very much. Per 100 grams, it's almost a third of what an egg would have. It's actually quite a bit of cholesterol. It's not that different from other things. I just looked it up.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying this, but I can show you the documentation, the science, and we can look at the science. And I hope we can look at the science, because obviously I have big reservations about big plant agriculture, which is where that's the only way veganism can thrive in 2018. So we can definitely go down that trail too. But I guess for the animal thing, right quick, if you're saying that a chimpanzee that we share over 98% of our genetic material with, similar genetic code, if it's okay for them to eat a ton of meat a year annually, and I have the studies, and Jane Goodall, I love her book. She wrote on it. She's studied it for over 30 years. If that's okay for them to do it, to eat a ton, 2,000 pounds of it, and other omnivores to do it, but it's morally wrong for me to do it, and that's your opinion, and that's fine. We can keep that as your opinion, and I'll keep my
because if you're going to look to a wild animal for your morals, then is it also okay for you to kill your young and eat them?
Whoa,
wild animals do that too.
I'm not saying I'm looking to them for morals. The way I take leadership,
but you are. You're saying it's okay for them to do it, so it's okay for me to do it. So you
that's
just
not what I'm saying.
That you literally
I don't think
you literally said that. You said, why is it okay for them to do it and not okay for me to do it? You just said that.
Sure. So if a vegan, so you have to think of where your ethics are, because you have two vegans and two meat eaters, and they may have a totally different moral code. Just because we share some similarities does not mean that we're 100% on the same playing field. So if the way I take leadership and the way I was told to take leadership is you take the good things you like from people and you shun the bad things you don't like. And I have that choice because, like you said, I have the ability.
Saying that morals are subjective.
Our morals. Well, everybody has their own code of ethics. So yeah, I mean, it's how am I to say that I think something's okay, but you're not thinking something's okay? Or when I talk to vegans that say,
well,
yeah,
so you this is why I said the golden
eggs, so you can have an abortion, like, you know, like we have to have.
The golden rule tells you all you need to know. The golden rule tells you all you need to know when it comes to like morals. We're not talking about cultural norms. We're not talking about legality. When we're talking about morals, that's what we're talking about. You know, you can say like in some, you know, Middle Eastern cultures or whatever, it's okay for somebody to stone a woman to death because she was caught cheating on her husband. And in the U.S. and in Canada and in Europe, that's unacceptable and that's considered, you know, illegal and whatever. So you could say, oh, well, it's subjective because in their culture it's okay. But what I'm saying is it's not, because it's still immoral, because you wouldn't want that done to you.
So if an herbivore abandons their young, is that okay?
This is what you're saying.
I can point to things that herbivores do that
This is what you're saying. I don't take my morals from herbivores or omnivores or any animal. I take it from the human moral agency, which tells me that if I wouldn't want it done to me, I'm not going to do it to somebody else.
Well, neither do I, but we have some similarities because omnivores like to eat both plants and animals, and I am an omnivore, and I like to eat plants and animals as well.
So let me
you're
say
using
here.
a wild animal to justify your action to keep doing that.
I'm not using it to justify the actions. I'm saying you're saying it's not morally wrong for them, but it is moral wrong for that one particular argument. And then we can talk about what herbivores do to their young. We can talk about what characteristics that you don't share with herbivores, but no, we can't talk about that. So okay.
Yeah.
Let me show you how your morals are contradictory, right? So fossil fuels kill animals and humans, right? The environmental damages kills both.
Right.
Okay. So you are saying that you are more ethical because you have rabbits and you don't use fossil fuels, right? So you kill your own rabbits, right? Yes. Okay. So if I say, well, I have a farm of humans and I kill these humans instead of buying things that use fossil fuels that kill humans, you said, no, you shouldn't have a farm of humans. That's contradictory of your own morals.
It's not contradictory.
Why not?
Because enslaving human beings is wrong.
Why?
Growing rabbits for food, I don't have an ethical problem with that.
But it was you used contradictory arguments. You said fossil fuels bad in one thing, and then you said fossil fuels better in the other thing.
Well, it's the same argument we applied to you. Do you think that fossil fuels destroys the environment?
Yes.
I mean, if we're gonna throw it back, so if you don't think that fossil fuels and oil and petroleum products destroy the environment and hurt human beings, if that's what you're honestly saying, well then we know that.
He agreed with you, Mike. You're not listening. He agreed with you. He said fossil fuels does harm the environment.
Okay.
Yeah. So what's the point, though? I didn't say we should enslave humans or rabbits. So that's the difference. You said you should do one and not the other, but then you used fossil fuels as an argument. But fossil fuels kills rabbits and humans, so it doesn't make sense why you pick one over the other in different situations.
Well, no, it's just like I said, I do it for the sustainability and preparedness aspect of it, and I'm very sustainable.
Well, you just said you don't use that as your baseline. You just said you don't use sustainability as your ethical argument. But now you're saying it is. But then when it comes to humans, then you say, well, no, now it's no longer about sustainability. So it's not your argument.
What I'm saying is that my footprint on society is a lot smaller the most meat eaters and most vegans. And if we're going to have an ethical argument, that's where I would have that conversation. Overall, I have less of an impact. We all have an impact. Mine is less. Now, if you want to bring slavery into that, that's fine. If you want to say that,
I wasn't talking about slavery. You're not understanding my argument, though. You're not understanding it. You're saying in one situation it's fine, in the other situation it isn't. That's contradictory of your own ethics. I'm not saying anything. That's what you said, and you're contradicting yourself.
Okay, say it one more time.
I didn't say slavery was fine. I didn't say anything about slavery.
I never said that you did say slavery was fine.
You said killing fossil fuels, killing bunnies with fossil fuels is more immoral than enslaving them and killing them in your house. And then you said enslaving and killing humans in your house is more immoral than fossil fuels. That's contradictory. The same argument. And then you're saying it's based off sustainability. It's not based off sustainability. You're contradicting yourself.
I think what happened is there might be a little time lapse here in the conversation. I think we might be talking over each other inadvertently. So I will go back to what I said from the very beginning. I think we're talking about ethics. We got to look at it in totality, and we look at it as something in regards to what I believe the impact we have on the environment. So I have less of an impact on the environment, even though I eat rabbits, than your average vegan. So if we're going to talk about ethics, that's where I would argue that.
So let me put that in your argument then. So that is your argument, is that say I'm a person, I stab one human and I eat them. That's less of an environmental impact than a vegan who goes to the grocery store and use fossil fuels and all this stuff. I'm more ethical because I stabbed a human and ate it and I used less fossil fuels?
Well, I don't think, like I said, I don't think that human beings should be killed and you shouldn't kill a human being. I think that animals and human beings are on a different scale. But if you were to look at the total impact, and that's what I'm looking at, yes, I am more ethical because of my impact on the environment is way smaller than your average vegan that drinks gallons and gallons and gallons of almond milk that goes to the store, buys oil-powered food and all that stuff. But I don't think we're ever going to come.
No, but you're missing the point. So the oil kills humans.
Well, I get your point. It's just, it's not the same. It's not the same.
No, it is the same because the oil kills humans.
I'm not.
The oil kills humans.
Yeah, I'm not going to put human beings and rabbits on the same scale. I'm not.
No, you're not. No, listen, you're putting humans and humans on the same scale. I'm putting humans and humans on the same scale. The oil, the fossil fuels. No. This is the argument. The oil and the fossil fuels.
It's your hypothetical argument.
Okay. Yeah, but you're agreeing to it.
No, I want to talk about reality. I'm not talking about.
This is reality. Let me talk about reality for a second. The oil and the energy, the environmental impact, all this stuff kills humans. It kills indigenous people, destroys their land, all this stuff. You're saying that it's fine for me to eat a human, stab them and eat them, and as long as it takes less fossil fuels, because we're not even talking about other animals right now. We're talking about humans.
Yeah, I don't think you should eat humans. And that's not like that argument that you bring. I'm not talking about eating humans. So that's.
If I can just jump in and maybe rephrase some of what Logan is saying, because I think you are missing what he's saying. He's saying that you're using the amount of fossil fuels or the sustainability kind of value. You're using that as your like rule for determining what thing is more ethical. That's what he's saying. And that is kind of what you're saying. You're just kind of not really putting the two and two together. You're using, in your example of like the rabbits in your own specific garden and whatever, you're saying that it's more ethical because the sustainable, the environmental impact is lower than somebody who's doing something like buying the almond milk. So you're using the environmental impact as the justification. So that's what he's saying. So he's saying, you could easily imagine a scenario whereby you're directly harming people, but somehow still coming out to a lower environmental impact than what you're doing. And by your logic, you would be saying that that is more ethical. But clearly, what all he's trying to say is that using the environmental impact cannot be used as your basis of your ethical argument.
Okay, I'll definitely remember that, because I think that's huge. What you said, you can't use environmental impact as an ethical argument. I will totally remember that for the future. But yeah, if you're asking me to stab a human being, yeah, I think human beings' lives are way more valuable than rabbits' lives. That's my opinion. Now, would I have a problem taking another person's life? I don't. If they're gonna hurt my family, if they're gonna rape my children, if they're gonna rape my wife, or if they're gonna, yeah, I have no problem. So with killing, no, I don't have a moral problem with killing in certain aspects, right? Self-defense, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody is trying to argue the other.
But if you're asking me in a hypothetical situation, yeah, so are you going to eat this guy, or are we just going to talk about the environmental impacts? That's a misnomer, because I would never eat a human being. Never.
Yeah, but no, we're not telling you to eat humans. We're trying to convince you to not eat animals.
The morality of killing, yeah, and based upon my life story and training experience and all that stuff, I don't have an ethical problem with defending myself, defending others, defending property. I don't have a problem with that. I don't.
But that's not what we're talking about. So,
well, we're talking about killing people. So let's talk about. I mean, you can't just say, so you're going to stab this guy, and then the oil impact, whatever.
Again, I think
that's ridiculous. No, I'm not going to eat a human being.
Nobody's telling you to eat a human being.
I know, of course.
And what we're trying to say is that you cannot use the environmental impact as your basis of determining whether or not something is ethical or not. So what we need to talk about is what do you use as your determination of whether or not something is an ethical or moral act. What is your definition of what do you use as a measuring stick to say that this is ethical and this isn't?
So like I already mentioned, I think it'd take forever if we went down the way we look at psychology, and that'd be obviously a big, long conversation. And I'm sure we'd get off on many topics like, is abortion wrong, self-defense, this, that, and we can definitely go down that rabbit trail. I was just trying to say, in general, right, that's how I look at it. I believe that morality and how we treat the environment goes hand in hand. And I understand that we all have an impact. But if you're saying that that's not a good use of an argument for it, then I think it's not going to go any further from here. There's other things I would like to talk about, solutions. So I get this is where we're different. I understand that you guys see animals as sentient, right? They are sentient. They do have feelings. They have a nervous system, just like insects. I grow insects here as well. So I understand that, right? I totally get that. I totally get that argument. I'm not saying that I don't. Now, like I said, we're going to disagree, and I understand that you don't think that environmental impact has anything to do with morality, like you said, and I understand it. I just don't think we're going to go any further here.
Well, see, you're putting words in my mouth. I didn't say it doesn't have anything to do with it.
That's not what I said either. I didn't say that either.
You can't equate environmentalism. You can't equate you have effect the environment with morals. You just said that.
No, I just showed how you were. I just said how you were contradictory. Sorry, I didn't say anything. I just showed how your argument was contradictory. That's all. Okay.
And and like I said,
all I'm saying is, like,
and I will say,
I can tell you, you didn't answer my question, but I'll tell you what I use as my moral, ruler or whatever. My ruler is the golden rule. If I don't want it to be done to me, I think it's morally wrong to do it to somebody else. If I don't want to be beaten, I don't want to beat somebody else. If I don't want to be, deprived of food or shelter or, whatever, then I don't want to do it to somebody else. If I don't want to be locked in a room without access to move however I want, regardless of how big that cage is, if it could be the nicest prison in the world, I could be living in a mansion, but if I can't leave the grounds, even if it's a 17-acre, beautiful, food oasis, whatever, but it's a prison that I can't leave, even then, I wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. So this goes to kind of like the vegan position on like zoos and things like that. Even if you made it huge, and even if the animal didn't even realize that the thing was there, if it's like you wouldn't want that to be done to yourself, you don't do it to somebody else. That's the moral ruler. Sure. And I don't know if you guys have pets. Do any of you guys have pets? Do you? Yeah, I get it, and I get this. You'll say that, and then I'll say it, and then there's some bending to the rule, and there's and then there's I'm sure a justification for why you have it. So here's the thing, right? I'm not going to ask you to explain yourself. I've been vegan for like 2.5 years, coming on 3, and my wife and I have had the dog. Actually, she had the dog before I ever even met her. Right. So now we can. That's kind of like a separate topic. because even within the vegan community, many different people have different views on it. I personally will not be getting any more dogs after this one passes away. She's getting, on in years, and when she passes, we don't plan on getting another dog. I don't think it's a good thing to. I especially am against breeding of any kind of animals for pets. I think adopting existing pets, you're actually trying to help out a situation, but I certainly would never want to get an animal bred for me to keep as a pet anymore. That's for sure. Right. So, I mean, we can probably sum that up there if you want. Or
and that's the thing. And I understand that, and I think in general, you guys are great guys. And I know, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say that we all want to do what we think is right. And I think we're all moral people, and we all want to try to help the environment. I mean, you guys probably disagree with me about, the decisions that I obviously make and how I'm not a moral person. That's fine. But yeah, I definitely, there's some touchy areas when we're talking about, certain things, don't do unto others what and I get that, and it's the same thing for and it would be and the dog is dependent upon you guys. You can't just get rid of it, and the same thing can be said for George Washington when he died and released his slaves, but his wife didn't, right? She didn't just get rid of it, all that stuff. So I get we can go down that rabbit trail, but I respect you guys. I respect you guys a lot, and I know that when it comes down to it, we're gonna have the disagreements on if using animals to feed our families is okay. And I get that. I know we're not going to change each other's minds, but if we can focus on, and we don't have to talk about environmental impact anymore either, but I guess if we could talk about solutions and maybe, intertwine how we, find different solutions that we think would help. I mean, I think that would be helpful at this point if you guys are open to that. Obviously, we're going to have disagreements on, certain aspects of that, but I think we all want to help, and I think that we can all respect the fact that we do want to help the environment. So I would love to talk about different ways that we can help, if that's okay.
Yep.
For others out there, absolutely. And I would love to, and I appreciate how awesome you guys are too. So, but yeah. So what are some ideas that you think? Because I'll go ahead and I'll kind of just I'll jump in after.
Yeah, I mean, my idea is pretty much kind of going back to small scale solutions. So I'm a big believer that a lot of the reason for the large scale plant and animal agriculture is because people kind of want to live in unnatural environments. So like when it comes to like cities and big tall like buildings and things like that, like lack of green spaces, it's all about efficiency, and usually it comes down to people and their drive for money and wealth. And the fact that we have like large businesses basically controlling, much of society nowadays, that's what ultimately drives this, is that people are getting rich. The reason why we have like these, automated like, food harvesters and all this kind of stuff is because it's efficient. If you look at the Native American Three Sisters planting, where they did corn, squash, and beans together, that's a completely sustainable gardening, methodology. You have the beans fixing nitrogen from the air into the soil. You have the squash providing ground cover. You're using less water. The corn is like providing a place for the beans to grow up, and you have like pretty much like a perfect like food balance that you can use, and it stores really well too. Right. So it's like you take something like that, but you can't do it mass scale efficiently. You can't have a harvester. I mean, maybe as technology gets better, this will change. But like right now, you just need all corn in a row so that the harvester can go through and just like plow through and take all the corn out automatically, because that's how the machine is designed. If you had squash all over the place, it would be crushing the squash. The beans need to be picked by hand. You need some like elaborate machinery to do that. So they don't have it. So because a company is going to make more money by having all of the same thing in one place, they're willing to basically like run the risk, and what they do is basically deplete the soil of the nutrients, because they're growing the same stuff over and over again, and then you got to rest the field or put in artificial fertilizers. So my thing is like going back to small scale stuff where people can do things for themselves, or like their immediate community, small scale kind of things, and in a permaculture, polyculture methodology. So you don't need the chemicals, you don't need the pesticides, the herbicides. You grow stuff together. And you do like community gardens in cities, you do like rooftop gardens, you do like, stuff like that in parks. I suggest people like basically forget your lawn and especially in like water strapped areas, and basically adopt, you know, like a back to Eden style wood chipped garden, or like using leaves and stuff like that, and grow as much of your own food as you can locally. That's my suggestion.
Right. I think that's great.
I was waiting for me.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, just one thing you skipped over earlier, I wanted to bring up. You said right at the very beginning, you said about 84% people quit veganism, right? And you said
that's based
like
on the statistics that I've seen. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, you would agree that people should go exercise, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably a pretty good idea. I think all of us do. I know Conscience Omnivores talk about it, and his personal experience, what I thought was honestly a great story. And then obviously you being a fitness trainer, yeah, I think it's important.
Okay, so I mean, if you look at like 24-hour gyms and commercial gyms, like they make money off the just the amount of people that are coming in there and then signing up and then quitting. They don't even show up, right? So
I don't know. I've never been a part of that. I'll take your word. I don't know. Sure.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a gym called like 24-hour fitness or something like that around here, and they charge like $10 a month, right? And the only way that they could stay open is just the volume amount of people who are just sign up and then just never show up, right? If all the people showed up, then the gym would be insane, right? But they just, $10 a month, who cares, whatever, and then they don't show up. But just because they quit exercising, they don't do it. Now, does that mean exercising is bad?
I was never making that correlation. I think, you can, like I already mentioned, I mean, you can live a completely healthy vegan diet with supplementation. I mean, I don't understand what the question is. Okay. I just said that. I just said that as a fact. I didn't mean that.
So the thing is,
you shouldn't do it. Yeah. Do it. I mean, absolutely do it. If you want to, like I said, you can do it. And if you have a meat eater that comes on your show and they say you can't do it, well, obviously we all know that's wrong, right? We know that's not true. You can. So I'm not saying you can't. So I hope I didn't give you that interpretation. You absolutely
no. So I mean, it's just kind of weird how meat eaters will use that as like an argument and say like what was the point of even bringing it up, right? Because like nobody would ever bring that up for exercise and say, well, a lot of people quit exercise, and they use that as an argument to say that that's a thing you shouldn't do because a lot of people quit it, right? It makes no sense.
Totally ridiculous. Totally. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
Anything that takes effort, like people quit all the time because changing your diet, changing, exercising, all those things take effort, and people are lazy and it's homeostasis and they just want to stay the same, right? So
I couldn't agree with you more on that, man. I really couldn't. So I hope I didn't give you that interpretation that you couldn't be healthy on it. I hope I didn't come across that way.
No, I just don't know why that's brought up all the time. Like that's an argument or something.
I wasn't trying to do that. The only reason why I mentioned that was because of what we're talking about now is just how to change that, right? How to get more people in the gym, how to get more people to stay on something that's sustainable. And if you think that being all vegan could be 100% sustainable, that's why we're talking about the solution. So let's talk about it, right? So yeah, I'm all for it, dude.
Yeah. So I mean, what it comes down to is like agriculture. I mean, if everybody could live in a perfect world and be like, oh, let's all. Like I always said, like in a permaculture and people movers, and you still had hospitals and all the things that you needed and still had entertainment, whatever, and everything was environmentally friendly. Yeah, that would be great. But then that would still be a vegan world. Right. I don't see how you could get around and be like, well, it's still going to be more sustainable if we add animals to kill,
Well, and like I said, I'm looking at it from. And the way I look at it, the reason why we have the population issues that we have is oil. I don't know if you've ever seen the chart that was in Collapse by Michael Rupert. I do like that chart because it shows the population of humans was sustainable. And then we added this awesome thing called oil and it shot up. And like what hunters have been on your program and said before, and I'm not here to advocate for anybody, but when you have too many people on a surface that's not sustainable, you're going to have a crash. And we already know that I hope we agree that our population size is unsustainable. I hope we would agree that using oil to grow plants isn't the healthiest way. And like I said, I think we'd all agree on that. And so, well, what are the solutions forward? Because even if we were to, you know, take animal agriculture and just keep big plant agriculture, we still going to have to use chemicals, and there's still going to be a die-off, right? So if we're talking about the next, you know, and I know you've talked about it, and I totally wholeheartedly agree. We're talking about mass extinction, the sixth, you know, we're going to be including humans and everybody else in that as well, right? I mean, that's common sense. So I just want to know what the solutions are, because I think we all want solutions. So, you know, even with me, even with how much you disagree with me, you know, the fact that I do produce plants, and if we could just get this crazy guy in the red shirt to get rid of his meat, we'd be better off. And I agree that's where that's the stance. So what are the solutions?
I don't think it's necessarily oil. I just think it's food supply. So if the food supply is large and people can just keep eating, they could just keep eating and humping, right? And then they're just going to keep doing it. And if you're giving them the liberty to just hump away, you know, there's people with not enough sense to have one kid, and they're having, you know, 3, 4, or whatever. It gets out of control. And, you know, if you got food to feed these people, they're just going to keep humping and whatever. So, I mean, eventually there's going to have to be some sort of laws or some way to stop people from just having kids, because, I mean, there most likely will continue to be a massive food supply for people. And it's going to get to the point where they just screw up the world. But, I mean, you're going to have to like have like a 1 kid per family thing or something, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's unless you have a better solution.
Well, no, and I get where you're coming from. I just, like I said, maybe this is just the, you know, the libertarian or, you know, different side of me. I just don't think government has the answers. I think oil caused this issue because of the population. We can only have the medicines and plastics and the food grown animal agriculture plant because of oil. Like there's no way around it. And unfortunately,
but you're saying, wait, hold on. You're saying starve people to death. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that at all. I'm not, and I hope that, you know, we wouldn't. Like I said, we're trying to be. Hopefully we're being really civil here. I'm not advocating that anybody starve to death, and I think that's horrible that you would even say that. Well, honestly,
no, but I don't know what you're trying to say when you say oil is the problem. So like, let's just say tomorrow we cut off oil, people would starve to death.
Sir, I'm not saying that we should cut off oil. I'm saying that would be a government intervention, and I don't think government has the issues. I'd hope that you wouldn't put me in that cat. Like I said, I've seen people starving personally firsthand. I would never advocate for starving. Okay, so I'd appreciate it if you not put words in my mouth.
Okay, no, but I'm asking what your solution is, and then you said the problem is oil. So I'm just going by what you said.
I'm telling you is the why we got here is because of our addiction to oil, and that's why we're here, and that's a problem. Now, what I'm saying is, as somebody who cares about preparedness and sustainability, because I want to do for myself, preparedness because I realize we're at a point where we can't do anything. There's like you said, I'm agreeing with the climate scientists. I'm agreeing with people like Guy McPherson, people that are talking about these issues and how it's pretty much inevitable that we're going to have this mass extinction. So with that being said, what can we do now? And I'd agree with Conscientious Omnivore here about being more localized. You know, I think it's more than just diet alone. It's one backyard at a time. And I also think that we need to really look at changing, you know, what we can do every day. Even if you have a small yard, you know, taking the grass that's there, removing it, putting in pasture grass because the impacts it has in removing CO2, and really taking a conscious effort forward. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like there's a whole lot we can do. And I feel like something bad, you know, eventually with the food supply will happen, because even on an awesome vegan diet, like you guys, like what we all advocate as far as plant-based, I think eating more plants is good. We have to realize that the way we're currently farming with oil is taking and stripping the soil. It's making the food unsustainable. It's making the spinach and the leafy greens not as nutritious as it was previously. So I think that these are things that we have to look at, and that's why I look at it from, you know, the way I live life as you know, through sustainability and preparedness. But I think that we should go about it, and I think it's good what you were saying about being local. I think if that's the only thing that we can agree on, that's great. Like I said, I would definitely encourage people to look at, you know, even your lawn. You know, you'd be amazed at how much CO2 you can pull from your lawn when you just put the right stuff there. And I have links and stuff, and I have stuff that I can put up. But I think that we're all in agreement that we should do something. But But yeah, unfortunately, as far as I'm not advocating for people to starve, but I know that it's going to happen regardless. And I want to do everything I can to make sure at least the people in my direct circle, are cared for. And that's where I come from.
If I could add a few things to there.
Yes, please.
So to Logan's points about, kind of like the population problem. So, and actually to go back to something you said, Mike, you said you think we all agree that there's too many people and it's unsustainable. I actually don't think that I would say that explicitly, that the amount of people we have already is too many, because there is a lot of information that shows that if you did stop feeding the grains, the corn, the soy to the animals, and you simply either fed those directly and or replaced them with more human food, because I agree that the GMO soy is not something we want humans to consume. But if you replace the same lands and you grew food for people, it's very possible that you would be able to easily feed the people that we have now. Now, again, is that really sustainable? No, because I'm in agreement with you, because you're doing it with petrochemicals, and that is not sustainable because you are diminishing the nutrient content of the soil and stripping it, and eventually it's getting worse and worse. But as a first step, that would definitely be better than what we're doing now. So, I think, that's the first thing to be done, is to get rid of the animal agriculture, because it does have a higher impact. You do require more water. You do require more space. You do require more inputs of all kinds, including all the petrochemicals. And usually it depends on what you're talking about. Like beef is worse than chicken and what have you. Like the larger the animal, the worse it is. But, it's anywhere from 6 to 10 times the amount of resources to get the same amount of, animal protein versus plant protein. So it's it would go a long way as a big first step. And then you could keep going and keep doing things better and better and get more and more kind of along this permaculture, polyculture, path. So that's where I think, I would go. And we just had somebody else join. So Logan, I'm assuming you invited this person.
Hello.
Yeah, man, this is Mr. Antinatalist person. And I just like to get his thoughts on how to save the environment as well.
Sure, yeah.
The environment. When I think about environment, it's a terrible torture machine. So, species preservationism, I don't agree with.
That's it? Okay, so the environment is a terrible torture machine. So anyways, before we talk to Mr. Antinatalist person, I just got a question too for Conscientious Omnivore about what you just said. So you just said you don't think that there's too many people. What about do you think there's a limit to where maybe people shouldn't live in the crazy north, where it's just all snow, and that's probably just an unhealthy environment for people to be in? How far do you think people should move to, climate wise?
I mean, are we talking from an ethical or from a practical standpoint, which, or both, or what do you mean?
Well, do you think I think it's just kind of unhealthy. The more north you go, it seems to just be more and more unhealthy for you.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would probably agree with that. It's hard to know because I don't have experience with going any farther north than where I am now, which is about on par with, the northeast of the U.S. So I mean, I'm probably in lower latitude than you are. So I mean, I've never lived any farther north than that, and I've lived farther south. I've lived in Florida before. So I mean, I don't know. I certainly wouldn't want to live really far north. I'd love to go visit some places that are really far north, but I would want to go in summertime. So I've seen pictures of Norway and Sweden and Finland and stuff in the summer. I would love to go there then, but I certainly wouldn't long to go and live there in the wintertime.
I was just thinking as a species, if there was, some form of depopulation where you didn't have to kill people or do anything unethical, that people should kind of live, somewhere in around the equator, nice area, and just fill out that one part of the earth, and then let the other part of the earth kind of do whatever it's doing.
I think you bring up a really interesting point with that, and and it always come down to the different principles on ethics, and I think we should all consent to want to do something better for the environment, but when you start saying that we're going to enact one-child policies and stuff like what we saw in China, there was a big push to only keep males, and kind of like what he said earlier. I'm sorry I didn't get your name, but yeah, I mean, the environment's a cruel machine, So I think that when we're talking about it, the government can implement policies, but I just don't think, number one, people are going to abide by it, and number two, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's too little, too late kind of thing. But I think it would be great if we could put initiatives in to make to where more people would consent to wanting to help. But I don't know. That's a good point you bring up. Do you guys think that governments have the ability to control this?
I wouldn't want the government to do it because I don't trust the government to do anything right. And it's just hard for them. It's hard enough for anybody to kind of know what's right, and then for the government, forget it. So I mean, I personally wouldn't like allow them to limit it or what have you. I wouldn't appreciate it. I think if you look at like especially Western societies, and in fact any country where it's like considered to be a developing country, the birth rate definitely drops off. Like people used to have a lot of kids because you had really high death rate. Like if you had a farm and you needed, like, again, from like just keeping yourself alive and whatever, like you needed a community. You needed to have like some kids to be able to like work the farm and like continue your own existence. If you knew that half your kids are going to die before they reach the age of 15, like you're going to have a lot of kids because like you just know like there's going to be a lot of them that are going to be killed off, and especially nowadays in most Western countries, like people aren't having more than one or two kids, but it's by choice because they don't want to have more kids. And if you look at third world countries, as they start developing and gaining more kind of like money and like wealth or whatever, they start having less and less kids as well, just by their own like will.
Can we get Mr. Antenatal person's thoughts on what's the best way for to have depopulation for the Earth?
That is neutering. Yeah, it's neutering them. Well, of course,
neutering them.
The convincing is going to be very hard, and it's going to take many decades. But that is the best way to go. Just neutering as many animals as possible.
You're talking about neutering animals, not people.
Oh, you're talking about people now?
Well, people, you want to neuter all the animals, but then, okay, so what about people, though? What are you going to do with people?
Yeah, of course. I think they should either be neutered or get a vasectomy, but it's kind of hard to convince that to people. So
how do you do it, though? If you go out, let's say you go out and you neuter all the animals, right? But then you can't convince people. What good is neutering all the animals if they're not going to do it?
It's not an easy process. It's going to take possibly many decades. But
it's a tough question. All right. Well, I mean, we could start the this quick second debate here. Antinatalist person sent me a question. Do you want to ask that same question? I'll let Conscientious Omnivore ask it because I already debated you, so you could ask Conscientious Omnivore the question about animal agriculture compared to nature. If you got
so
that.
The question is, so the question is, why are factory farm animals? Wait a second. Yeah. So the exact question, the reason I'm asking that question is because the reason you don't support factory farms are because you don't want the poor animals coming into but wildlife animals also have a very poor quality of life, similar to factory farm animals.
I don't know if you're freezing there.
What exists.
You've broken up. I literally couldn't hear half of what you said. Can you repeat it, please?
Yeah. So the question is, why do you think that factory farm animals have a worse life than wildlife animals?
Okay, I think that's pretty easy to answer. I mean, if you just put yourself in the situation of one or the other, if you're a wild animal and let's say I'm a deer, I'm running around in the woods, I can be with my family, I can like find and forage for food, I'm free to come and go as I please, and one day like a wolf catches me and eats me and kills me and I die a horrific death. Like that's pretty bad. Yeah, like nobody wants to go out that way. But like I at least have a chance to try to kick the wolf, I at least have a chance to try to run away, I at least have a chance to fight and like try to survive. And the life that I led up to that point was still pretty good in the sense that like, you know, I had some happiness, maybe I had family and friends around me and what have you. If I'm a factory farmed animal, you can guarantee that none of those things are true. So you have no like, you know, family structure, social structure. You have no freedom. You can't even usually see the light of day. You are, you know, inherently being fed a much worse diet. You probably have horrific illnesses that you're dealing with, like abscesses growing. There's a whole bunch of other things that I could keep going on and on about. And the death is just as gruesome and just as terrible. So even if they like bolt gun animals, a lot of times that doesn't work. They don't get incapacitated. So usually when they're getting killed, they are still fully conscious. You know, there's just a whole bunch of other things. So basically the death is just as bad, and the whole life leading up to it is, you know, arguably just horrible the whole way. And yeah, and then you have no chance. So like you're guaranteed to get killed. Whereas in the wild, you may survive and die of old age.
Yeah, that's a good answer. But do you know why I asked the question?
Nope. Tell me.
So the reason it's about neutering animals. So since wildlife animals have a bad quality of existence, similarly to factory farm animals, I think they should be neutered.
You're taking away their right to choose their life, and you're deciding for them that their quality of life is bad. You have no way of getting consent from them. Just like you wouldn't want somebody to forcefully, you know, neuter you. Like I wouldn't want to be forcibly sterilized. And this has happened in the past. I mean, they did this in California back in the 30s. And that's where the Nazis actually got their sterilization program from the U.S. and Canada and Sweden. They were the biggest proponents of like eugenics based forced sterilization. And again, you just go back to the golden rule. Like, why wouldn't you do it to somebody else? You wouldn't do it to somebody else because you wouldn't want it done to you. If you choose to go and get a vasectomy yourself, that's your own decision. You're going to a doctor, you're paying them money, they're going to do that to you because that's what you want. You have no way of getting that consent from an animal. You can't talk to a deer or a pig or whatever.
Okay, so here's my counter argument. So if I see someone in the streets attacking someone, then I can just punch them in the shin and knock them out, even if that violates that person's consent. The same is with a wildlife animal, that I do it to defend the offsprings from being born with a very poor quality of life.
No, in one case, you're stepping in to protect the individual being harmed by somebody else. So you're actually, you know, doing a righteous thing because you're helping somebody who's being attacked. That person obviously didn't give their consent to be attacked by the attacker, so you're helping there. In the other case, you're basically taking away the option of the animal to reproduce based on the idea that you know better for their offspring that hasn't even been born yet, that it would be better for them to never have lived than to have lived. You're deciding for them.
Of course, I know better. Well, if a human kills an animal similar to how lions kill gazelle, for as an example, then they are terrible animal abusers. So yes, so that should get a perspective of how bad it really is. I mean, they don't treat if it would just be a disaster. You would think it's a disaster if they treated wildlife, if they treated, if someone treated their pets as wildlife animals, would think it's a complete disaster. So
Okay, look, I think this will be helpful if you think about this again in the human context. You can have a person who has a horrible life. They've been abused as a child. They've suffered extreme, abuse, hunger, beatings, sexual abuse, whatever. And if they've lived through that, and you ask them, would you rather never have existed or gone through this? That person, it's up to them, but they may say that, yeah, I still prefer to have been here. I would still be happy to have lived and been alive. And you're deciding that that person is wrong. You're saying that under no circumstances would that be worthwhile. But if you actually talk to some people who have gone through those kind of situations, they will tell you that they are happy to have still had a life, and they're happy that they've had a chance to live.
I got a question on that. Kind of what's in the vegan community. I've seen a couple different takes on it, and not just the vegan community, and just in general. I mean, I shouldn't say just one group, but the practice of obviously neutering or spaying animals. I know PETA's really big in that, and the other animal advocacy groups are into that. And I know, if you are a vegan, I know that's an internal debate and argument about pets, but what's kind of the general consensus from what your experience is? Is that something that's really commonly held practice? Because I mean, if it's okay to neuter your pet, I guess you could push that to where you could neuter wild animals. I've never had a pet that was spayed or neutered, so I don't really know.
Yeah, I actually think that's one of the main reasons why I don't want to have pets anymore as a vegan, because I don't think it's okay to spay and neuter them. But from a practical standpoint, if you don't, the way that we've bred them and the numbers they have, if you just simply don't do that, you end up with too many, and you can't just let them out in the wild the way they are, because they can't really fend for themselves. Now, I think it's probably an unpopular, kind of opinion to have in the vegan community, maybe, but to some extent, getting rid of the pet animals that we have, even if it means that they die in the woods, to some extent, I could argue for that, I guess. I personally don't want to have pets anymore. I personally don't want to be responsible for spaying or neutering animals. I've never actually done it myself. We did have dogs growing up, and none of them were neutered except one, but we got him from a shelter, and he was already neutered when we got him.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't like the idea. I wouldn't want to do it myself, and I wouldn't want it to be done to me. So,
do they have vegan-friendly pet food for pets that people that don't want to be dependent on big animal agriculture for their pets? Because that's something I brought up with people too in the past. They have dogs and cats, and they feed their dogs good quality food. Blue Buffalo, all these products that are no corn, wheat, soy, that kind of thing. But they still get their animals from big agriculture. So it's like they don't do it themselves.
We feed our dog a vegan food. Okay. So it's certainly possible, and I think it depends on the animal. With cats, it's a lot harder. It's not impossible. I know some people do have vegan pet food for their cats, but they're a lot harder to do. Some cats just don't take well to it.
Right.
They do have vegan foods for them, but some animals just don't take well to it. Dogs are, generally speaking, pretty easy from everyone I've seen online and reading about it. It's pretty easy to have a dog eat a vegan diet.
Okay. Yeah, I just wondered.
Um, I have some more arguments for neutering wildlife animals. So most animals in a lot of species actually die before they grow up. So their entire existence is just being born and dying. And well, I think you agree that that is a negative.
I don't know what you mean by that. I would agree it's negative. Is it a negative for that poor animal that died as a baby?
For them to be born, if if it's negative for an animal that is just born and then die very quickly after that, it can't feel good. So
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that, like, again, putting it in the human perspective, like I would be, you know, I wouldn't want to just be born and then die like right away. I'd want to keep living. Yeah.
yeah, but most animals don't grow up. A lot of animals, the majority of animals die before they grow up.
I think.
Yeah.
I think. I'm sorry. I think what from talking to you guys, and this has really been my. I guess I'm being able to gauge this better. I think with vegans, and correct me if I'm wrong. I think we all agree that bad things happen to animals and people. You know, there's always going to be prey and predators. But I think that it's the idea that since we as humans live in 21st century, we don't have to, and I have no problem admitting we don't have to. We can eat a vegan diet and get everything we need because of how far we have advanced scientifically, and obviously using oil and transportation and all this other stuff. We have the ability to do it. And since we have the ability to do it, that we should therefore do it because it's seen as most ethical, because killing is killing and it's bad and we should know better. So I think that using an argument that nature does it doesn't apply to humans because we have the ability to know better and to do something. My biggest argument against that, obviously, you know, kind of what you weren't here earlier, but just the ability, the sustainability aspect that, you know, I'm able to do it here. I know there's always going to be an ethical decision. There's always going to be an ethical claim to it. But the reason why I really wanted to come out here is because I always see, and I always see you guys talk to these people that say, well, grass fed, and they say this stuff, but they don't put any steps forward to that. And as somebody who can produce all of it on a large scale, but without much impact on the environment, you know, I just want to come out and tell these people who say grass fed without any of the, you know, the follow up behind it that, yeah, it is possible, but you're not doing it. So if you're dependent on big agriculture, you know, it's still a problem. But I think that's the majority.
Yeah. Just to be clear, just so you know what Mr. Antinatalist person's position is, he wants to end all life on the planet. Oh,
okay. Yeah, I didn't know that at all. Sorry. I went off on a really, really bad tangent there. Well, I mean, that would solve all the problems, right? Because there would be no problem. That's the position.
Yeah, you pretty much summed up, I think, what antinatalism is. It's a zero-sum game.
I'm sorry, man. I haven't followed you or seen you on other debates. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'm not trying to insult you. I know that might have came off condescending, and I didn't mean it that at all. I had no idea. I thought you were just trying to say nature hurts people and, you know, whatever. But okay, my bad. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, I want to live, so I wouldn't fall in that camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's wow. I didn't know that. Cool.
So, is there any really good arguments that you wanted to share?
Yeah. I said, well, I will say a little bit more about my previous arguments. That most animals grow up, so since they're just born and then they die, it's even you guys can agree that it's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum life with no value to be had. It's just shit.
Well, for the animal that got killed like almost right away, for that individual animal, yes, but like to base what you think should be done to all life on Earth based on the fact that like some animals did get that, you know, kind of bad life. I don't think you can make that leap.
Yeah, most animals have a bad life because most animals die before they even grow up, and so if we
Well, I don't know where you're getting most. I don't know how you get that. But even if that were true, even if like almost all, the fact that there are some that live, you can't decide for them.
I think the biggest thing that I just want to put on this, this is really interesting. I never had a time to really formulate this thought, but just going off improv off the top of my head, I think that when it comes to life, at the end of the day, as long as there's still an instinctual drive for self-interest and for plants to live, animals to live, you're always going to have a planet that lives because of just how the identity of life is. Life wants to live. And at the end of the day, you're right, everybody dies, but everything is reborn, everything. Even with a fire, you can see a fire totally destroy the side of a mountain, but that biochar is going to create even more life than what was there before. So as long as there's a will to live, you're going to have life. Yeah,
anti-natalists would consider that an appeal to futility and compare it to animal agriculture but anyways, so but sure. What you said there was that an animal's life is bad because they died young, but the dying part is the bad part. But how do you know? Like, you can't jump in their head and determine that how many years was all bad.
I mean, just about it for a second. If someone is born and then they get sick and they die, they experience brutal pain. So of course it is bad.
Okay.
But have you ever talked to somebody who has like a terminal illness, and have you asked them like, hey, would you rather not have ever lived?
No, but also you hold on. You changed the argument though. I said, how do you know? Because you said all animals have a bad life and they die young or whatever, right? Or on average, even if on average. But how do you know that those years weren't good? You know, on average, you can't jump in their head. And then you just said, well, some people get sick. What does that mean?
Not
it doesn't mean anything.
The majority of many animals in different species die before they grow up.
Yeah, but okay. On average, are most animals sick throughout all their years of being alive? On average, are most animals sick throughout their years of being alive?
Yeah. Probably some.
So, I mean, how could you be sick all the time? That doesn't even make sense, first of all. Like, just picture yourself. Just picture yourself. You can't be sick all year round unless you have a disease.
Like a lot of the birds die very young, so their existence is just being born and then dying quickly. So, of course, I can't teach you to have sympathy for that, but I can give reasons to have sympathy.
You just said dying quickly, so they die quickly, so they're dead. That one part,
being born and dying, that's the whole part, and there's nothing good.
But how do you know that? How do you know that they don't have good? That's what Logan is asking.
Well, what kind of opportunity is there to have a good life when they just experience the worst part only?
How do you know that they only experience the bad part? Like in the case that you said, like a little baby bird. Let's say it only lived for a couple days. Let's say it only lived for a couple days, but it hatched. It had its mom there. It had its brothers, sisters there, and it got fed once or twice, and then it fell out of the tree and died. How do you know that it still wasn't like, man, that those 2-3 days were awesome?
So that agree to people breeding animals in such bad conditions?
You broke up. I couldn't hear your question.
So does that mean you want to? Does that mean you would want? Does that mean you wouldn't disagree that people breed animals even in that conditions that are so bad.
No, I'm against all kind of like breeding of animals for any purpose. I'm a vegan. I don't think people should breed animals for anything.
Yeah, said that's see that's good. And if people shouldn't do it, why should animals do it then?
Because I don't decide for them what they want to do. Because it's the golden rule. I wouldn't want somebody to decide that for me, so I don't want to decide it for somebody else.
Well, I can also use the golden rule and say I don't want to be born as a bird for 3 days and then dies.
So I got a question, and I don't want to, like I said, I need to be careful how I say this. I want to address the elephant in the room. I don't know how to do it without being straightforward. What's your drive to wake up tomorrow?
Yeah, the drive to wake up tomorrow.
Yes.
Well, I'm not in pain, so, and I have motivation to do lots of stuff, like playing guitar and working out and talking to friends.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I would just say that I think that that's really cool. I think that's awesome. I like to work out. I like to talk to friends and stuff too. And I'd say that's why me and probably everybody else on this panel, and why a lot of different organisms have a vested interest in the next day. I mean, that's all I wanted to that's all I wanted to really just kind of get across. But yeah, hopefully that wasn't too politically incorrect to ask.
Well, I partly think it's a waste of time to just argue that all life it is better for everyone to not be born. Instead, I could rather make the exploitation argument. So if even if the majority likes it, it still does not outweigh the suffering of one person. I can make that argument too.
Sure. And I guess my next question is, what do you do to prohibit that suffering?
Well,
like, what do you do personally? It's good to say, and this is what I would say to any meat eater or anybody else, vegan alike. Like, what do you do to make that impact less? Because if it's just hyperbole, then it's it's whatever. It's cool. We can talk about it, but what do you do?
Yeah, so I tell people about veganism, and I've made some videos on my channel about veganism too, and
okay.
And spreading atheism and antinatalism is it's a little bit harder, but that's some of the things I do.
Sure. And if you think that effort is, alone worthwhile to prevent the suffering and stuff, cool. I'd say it's probably not, but that's not for me to judge, and it's not for me to tell you how to live your life. So, yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, I just want to address something in the comments. There's a guy who, John Calval, says that Conscientious keeps trying to justify animal suffering by saying that if you take any steps to stop it, it will inevitably lead to people starting to kill humans, which is utter BS. I have not made any such claim. I don't know where this person is watching or listening, but I don't think it's this channel. You're grossly misunderstood. And then the other thing is here that says animals don't choose; they are biological machines. That is horrifically wrong. You have no idea. You have no way of knowing what an animal chooses to do or not chooses to do, or what they think, because we can't communicate with them with the way we communicate with people. I think this is just a really, really poor, logical misstep. I don't know, Mr. Antinatalist, if you have any opinion on that statement. that animals are just biological machines?
Well, well, it, um, well, yeah, they are biological machines, and well, and not biological machines. What do you think they are?
Well, do you think people are biological machines too?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So,
But
like,
I mean,
what about
biological
animals that like mate for life and get depressed, and sometimes they'll actually starve themselves to death? They won't eat anymore when they're held in captivity. They're biological machines, really?
Um, I mean, even if they are, if we can call them whatever they are, but I don't think it helps the argumentation in any way.
Yeah, I don't think it helps the antinatalist argument in any way. I think it actually proves quite the opposite of what John claimed there. Because if you look at like animals that are kept in captivity, sometimes they will actually stop eating. If they were biological machines, they would absolutely keep eating, because all they would feel is their sense of hunger, and they would eat.
Well,
And the same thing with people, and that's that's not true.
Yeah, but I have a feeling that I'm completely missing. So I'm friend with that John Calwell, so I can just ask him afterwards about
Okay.
it.
Cool.
Because I have not the full context of what he was trying to say, I think.
Okay. Logan, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I had a quick question for Millennial.
Yes, sir.
We didn't even talk about health at all. Do you think meat is healthy?
I think that like plants, there's a spectrum, and I think there's some plants that are really good for you. There's others that are not as good for you. I say the same with animals. Meat, primary source of my meat comes from rabbits. I know everything that goes into the input, and I do have evidence to show that they are a high quality food source. Do I think that eating grain anything is good for you? I would have lots of I don't think grains are good for you. I don't think that big agriculture produces really high quality meat, and I definitely think that there's difference in quality. In anything, right? Even plants, there's a difference in quality in what I can grow versus what you're going to get at the store, and I think we'd all agree. So when you're talking about diet, I think you definitely have to look at what you're eating and putting in your body. I eat a lot of plants. I eat mostly plants. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that they are health aspects that we have to look at. Absolutely.
So, I mean, just like if you look at, say, an animal wasn't in animal agriculture, right? Just like the properties of what meat is. What is in meat that's healthy for you, and why do you need to eat meat? Why is it good? Like, why does it matter if it's grass fed or, what's the science?
Okay. So I don't know how to say that. I don't want to come, like I said, I don't want to come off condescending, but you're only as good as the inputs that you put in, right? So even if we're talking about plant-based, like we're talking about plants, right? And we're talking about what we put in them. If you're talking about taking a petrochemical and spraying it on that plant versus a good quality humus or compost that has all the nutrients, rock dust, whatever you want to do it. I watch GYG, Growing Your Greens, with John Kohler. I don't know if you guys watch any of his stuff, but the quality that you're going to get from his plants are going to be way higher quality than what you're going to get at the store. So if we're talking about quality of inputs, that's where you really have to look at it. And yeah, I do eat mostly. I eat a lot of plants, but I also eat meat, and the meat that I produce is very high quality, and the science behind the quality is there. So I guess that would be, if we want to talk about that, I'd love to talk about what you're getting at a store.
I think you kind of missed. I think you kind of missed what my question was, though. Like, cool. You just said it's high quality because it's high quality because it's got this, it's got this. But what actually makes it good for a human? Like, why do you even eat it? Like, is there a point for you to even eat it?
Yeah, because it gives me a lot of, like I said, I have all the nutrient. I can put out all the nutrient content for you. You know, obviously I take my food very seriously. So if you want me to put those nutritional stuff out there, I can do that on my channel. But yeah, there's a lot of good omega 3s. There's a lot of good psyllium, protein, vitamin B12. You know, there's a lot of good stuff in it. And the food is, like humans, we're only as good as what inputs we put into our body. And so, you know, so yeah, it's high quality stuff. Just like
so
plants. Go ahead.
Here's why I asked though. Here's why I ask is because if you look at studies, like they show, it's not just the added things like, oh, the drugs, the antibiotics, all these things that are causing problems. It's the actual properties of the meat. So it's the L-carnitine, the saturated fats, the cholesterol, the heme iron, the hormones that the animal has. Like there's a laundry list of things that are harmful in animal products to humans. And if you have, but if you could eat plants, like you're saying, well, I know it's good quality. You also have good quality plants. Yeah. Wouldn't you say, well, I should just eat more of these good quality plants instead of eating these rabbits that have harmful ingredients in them?
Well, you would have to show me what harmful ingredients the rabbits have for me.
Well, I just named 5 though, and that's just off the top of my head.
So if we want to talk about saturated fat, like I said, I don't think you really know a whole lot about rabbit meat in general. But if you were to eat nothing but rabbit meat, it doesn't have enough fat to sustain you, right? Yeah. So you can have the saturated fat argument, we can have the cholesterol argument, but I'm never going to have the clogged arteries because I eat high quality rabbit meat. It's just
a quick question for you, Mike. Mike, do you know what your cholesterol level is? You don't have to tell me, but
no, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I know where it's at, and it's right around the 115.
Your total cholesterol is 115.
Yeah, well, for the you have obviously LDL and HDL. So yeah, it's
no, but what's your total? If it's over 150, like you're in kind of trouble of like getting plaques building up.
No, I'm below that. So overall, I'm probably 55 plus 65, whatever. Yeah, 55 plus 65, 70. So yeah, it's low, but that's because I do eat healthy. So I trust me, and I understand. I've seen you guys debate, and yeah, if we're talking about somebody that eats chicken McNuggets and they depend on the big animal agriculture system, then yeah, we can talk about cholesterol. We can talk about all that stuff. But rabbits are 3% cholesterol. You know what I mean? So, and for me, it's about sustainability, like I've described. And I understand that there's the moral argument, there's an ethic argument that we can't, that we're not going to be able to remedy, and that's totally, that's fine. But
yeah, I mean, I just had a recent stream with,
and rabbits are easier to grow than planting. Like crops, like they are so much easier to grow and maintain high quality rabbit meat than it is to grow crops. And I grow crops. Restoring soil is not easy. It's not. So
I just had a stream recently with somebody, Liam Anthony, and shout out to Liam. And we talked about this question a little bit, that, if somebody was eating like, 90 whatever % plants, and then they had, the rest animal products, they would probably still be, pretty damn healthy. And it could be argued that the benefit of them going to fully plant-based, is probably maybe not even going to be noticeable. So if your total cholesterol is already below 150, going to a fully plant-based diet isn't probably going to help you there. I mean that, but that's not to say that the other things that that Logan mentioned, might still be a benefit. The carnitine, the extra, like wear and tear on your kidneys or whatever. There might be some other kind of things that might be better, but for somebody like you, I wouldn't really go down the health route. I would just, again, go back to the ethics, which we've already kind of talked about. So, I wouldn't really argue the health, Logan. I don't know how you feel about this, but I mean, it's sort of like the Okinawan diet, right? Like they were 96% plants, a huge percent, from, like the healthy starches, like sweet potatoes and what have you. If somebody's eating 96% whole food plant-based and they're eating the rest 4 or 5% on, animal products, that's not going to probably sway them, That's
I would disagree with that, just because I have seen a study. We did review this study with Milk Jar that shows even eating meat once a week, or I think it was even once every 1.5 weeks, it raised diabetes risk significantly just to eat meat once a week.
Sure, and I saw that. I saw the milk jar thing, and like I said, you talk to a guy like that, and that's why I came out here, because I wanted to show that we're not like, not all meters are milk jar, or the other guy that you guys had from Jordan that want to talk about nature and that and all that stuff. I'm not. That's not who I am. But yeah, I mean, I think overall, with my diet and being able to, I think it's really hard to show studies on somebody that, that this is how I live, and this is why I choose to live that way. But the ethics thing, I guess, is the biggest thing, and it's obviously something that we can talk about. But overall, my message to everybody out there is, do more gardening. Be more sustainable. Even screw millennial prepster. He kills animals. Cool, great. But if you're not growing at least something, start doing it. And that's kind of, I guess, my biggest message. And I have no problem putting myself out there. So yeah, I mean, that's why I started a YouTube channel, just for that reason. I know people are going to disagree on a lot of different stuff, but even if you live in an apartment, grow your own herbs, man. You can get a window seal aquaponics system that's going to prevent you from having to go buy oregano and parsley and cilantro and all that. It's super easy to do, and the stuff works. And you can go bigger scale like me, where I have bigger fish. So it's one of those things where I just do something. I guess that's my biggest thing. Just I want to push away from just as much of this consumerism ideal as possible, and just grow something. I guess that's my biggest message.
I'm in agreement with you there. I think
brother,
can't beat that stuff. Yep. And taste wise too. I mean, it's just making your life so much better.
Absolutely. Really good. And that's what's good to talk, because even if we don't agree, like if you ever want some heirloom seeds or something, or you want to try something, let me know. I have no problem sending stuff your way, vice versa. Like, I think that's what it is. It's being able to transplant and do that kind of thing. So even if I'm just the worst person in the world because, I grow rabbits, that's fine. I can take that. But let's talk about backyard gardening. Let's talk about aquaponics. Let's talk about the stuff that is truly sustainable. Let's exchange compost tea recipes, Let's do all that stuff, man, That's my biggest thing.
Yep. No, I think we're in agreement on a lot of things. So, I think this might actually be kind of a good place to end it. I like ending on a positive. Right. I don't know if Logan, if you want to say anything else, or
can I make? I want to make one argument, an ethical argument for veganism, since I'm here.
Sure.
And that people they gain taste pleasure out of it, but that is not any different from dog fighting or something. Imagine if someone gets pleasure from watching dog fighting, and that is not so very different from just taste pleasure, with the consequence of an animal living in torture.
I think that's a good general point. I think, I don't know if you had seen the beginning of the debate here with Mike, but I don't think that really applies to Mike. I don't want to speak for you, Mike, but I don't feel like your argument for eating the rabbits is the taste.
No. I mean, you can make anything taste good, right? I mean, we know there's lots of bad things out there that
But I agree with you, Mr. Antoniolos, that's a good argument in general, because I think a lot of people do use taste as justification for eating meat. A lot of people use tradition, same kind of thing. This is the way it's always been done, and you can say the same thing going back to slavery. Like, this is how it's always been. It's not a good reason. So okay, cool. Anybody else? Any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. And it was actually an honor to meet you guys and talk. Because, like I said, a big fan for a long time. Watch a lot of your stuff, and the one thing that made me want to come out here and do this is just show that we're not all meat eaters are the same, just like not all vegans are the same. And regardless of where we fall in the ethical sphere, I think we're all trying to push forward. And I'd love to talk to you guys again in the future, or if, like I said, if you guys ever, if you're ever wanting some heirloom seeds, or you're ever, wanting to talk about all that stuff, I encourage everybody to grow their own food. And you don't have to follow me, but people I recommend following you are obviously you guys, and then John Kohler, growingyourgreens.com. Like, you know, start looking at that stuff and, you know, start pushing forward and start making your compost teas and start doing the, you know, it's the little things. It's sustainability is one brick at a time. Just like I'm sure veganism and anything else is one brick at a time. So I think we're all overall, you know, if we're arguing, you know, different things, as long as, you know, like you said, if we can all be in a perfect world, you know, we can't all be there, but we can one brick at a time move forward. So it's an honor and privilege to talk to you guys.
Cool. It was great having you on. Thanks, man.
I just had one question for Mr. Antinatalist. How do you know aliens don't exist?
Well, well, I haven't, honestly, I haven't read enough books about it. So I should read more books about it.
Okay, so if you don't have the universe figured out, do you think it's a good conclusion to end it before you have it figured out?
Well, what have aliens? What?
So if you don't have the universe, oh, you cut out or something.
Okay.
So, anyways, Planton's gonna do my closing statement for me. Oh wait, let him answer the question first.
Okay. See, this is what you do, Logan. I can ask that as, who is the leader in Vietnam called? And if you can't answer it, then what if I just said, but you don't have the universe figured out, Logan Blake? See, that's what you do.
Yeah, I don't have it figured out. I'm also not the one asserting that we should end the universe, though. So you're asserting that you should end the universe because you have it figured out. And then I ask you a simple question about the universe. You said, I don't have it figured out. So then I'm saying, well, why should you end it if you don't have it figured out? Right?
Yeah, but that knowledge, yeah, I guess I don't need to explain it further than that.
But that, I mean, you're asking me too, like a weird thing, like, oh, tell me the guy's name in Vietnam, and somebody else asked me something like, oh, show me that Bugs Bunny exists. We're not talking about like ridiculous things like that. We're talking about like this gigantic universe filled with planets. You're saying that you already know that like you're asserting that that there is no life on any of them. I'm not saying.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, I think there's probably some life, but probably not intelligent like human beings or something. But
you're guessing though. How do you know?
Well, I didn't prepare for this alien debate, whether alien exists or not.
Well, I mean, if you're saying like you have all life figured out and we should just end the earth, we should kill all the animals or neuter all the animals and all this stuff because life's not worth living. And then I ask you a simple question like, is there life anywhere else in the universe? Because if there is, I mean, that goes hand in hand with antinatalism. Like, what do we do about that? And you're just going, and you are asserting that you know that there is no life.
So do you realize how difficult space travel is?
I would agree. I think it is pretty difficult.
Do you know what?
Yeah, but I mean that's not the point, though.
Hey, listen, quick question for Mike. Mike, one of the viewers, Kay wants to know if you are a personal trainer. I will ask because Kay is a regular viewer. Yeah.
No, I mean, as far as, I work out and exercise. I stay pretty active, but no, I've never trained anybody. I don't have a kinesiology background or anything like that. So.
All right, thanks.
All right, so here's Planton. Conscientious Omnivore, and Planton got a video coming up, a collab. And if you were me in this veganism and antinatalism debate, what kind of closing statement would you do?
Oh, I kind of wanted to work my my debate skills against it. Actually, I wanted to take the stance of antinatalists just to see where you go with your arguments. But if you wanted to end
that's not what we agreed upon.
Aliens. I feel like it should be that meme, you know, like aliens, the guy with the crazy hair.
Well, obviously, I mean, I agree with the veganism part of it, but the antinatalist intrigues me. intrigues me a little bit. But anyways,
All right.
yeah, we're coming out with a video, a 3-part video. I guess Logan does the first part. I'm doing the second part, and Conscientious is doing the third part. So be on the lookout for that. It was interesting listening to this debate overall. I was listening to the vegan gains debate earlier, and it was kind of, I'm sorry, what's your name in the red shirt?
Oh, Mike. Molina
Mike.
Prepster. Yeah.
All right, Mike, you had some good points to hear from a different angle. So, but other than that, yeah, you know, stay tuned, subscribe to everybody, and have a great day.
What's your anti-natalist position? Now I want to know what.
Well, I mean, like I said, it's interesting. Like, you know, one of the truths of Buddha is that life is suffering, and you know, if you think about it a little bit, it's true. It's like, it's almost like the default position, and in order to get out of it, you would have to seek happiness. And I think Mike in the red shirt asked, like, what keeps you up? Like, not what keeps you up at night, but like, why do you wake up in the morning? And my answer to that would be to avoid suffering. Like, everything you do, you don't want to suffer. Like, you wouldn't just wake up and stab yourself with a pencil or something like that, because that would create suffering in the body. So the way that life navigates, it's to avoid any type of pain, any type of suffering. So that being said, like, suffering is always the default point. So in that sense, that, you know, anti-natalists do have a case.
I would disagree with you, man. That can only motivate you so much. What wakes you up? What keeps you going?
We got an echo here. Hold on, somebody
should go.
Somebody's got an echo going.
I think the things that that need to, like, get somebody out of bed is the stuff that's positive. And even Mr. Antinatalist listed positive things. He didn't say he wakes up because like his back hurts and he can't lay down in bed anymore. He gets up because of the positive things. Like, you need the carrot, you don't need the stick. Like, the stick can only motivate you so far, and then eventually you give up and just like succumb to it. The carrot is what keeps people going.
Right, but I mean, there's always positive and negatives, in life. But what trumps it all? Like, we all die, right? And that's the ultimate form of suffering or release. So that being said,
I did a video on this. I did a video on this. So you're saying that suffering is like, it's a negative, right? So then when you're awake, you're saying that it's not even really a positive. You're just trying not to suffer. So you're at like a neutral, and then you're just trying to avoid being hungry. You're trying to avoid being confused, being starving, doing all these things, right? Is that what you're saying?
In a way, like being hungry is a form of suffering, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Okay.
But there is, like,
it's basically, it's basically mass. So what basically the anti-natalism argument is either you're a zero or you're at a negative, right? But that's not true, because let's say if you wake up and you do something like you're lonely, right? I'm lonely. Somebody comes to your door and you're, I'm not lonely anymore, right? Now you're at a zero. 5 more people come to your door. Now you're even more happy. I got a party now. And then, you win the lottery. Now I'm at +3. It's like you can get more and more happy throughout your day and have a better and better day. Go to the amusement park. It's not always like I'm just trying to avoid suffering. Like, there's great moments of joy that really escalate.
Right, and I would agree with that. But it's like the pursuit of life is where joy happens. So, like, if you don't pursue anything, there's suffering. But at the same time, if you do pursue a lot of things, like you take a career path that's really hard, there's a lot of hard work and suffering that goes into that as well. So there's always this underlining, like, doom and gloom feel to life. That's not something that you have to work for. It's always there. Does that make sense?
So if you look at so what work is, right? So people will tell you, get a job that you like, right? Because then it's all depending on how you're looking at your work. So you're saying, like, you're having to work in order to have happiness, in order to have money and a fulfilling life. You have to put in, basically the work and do it. Like right now, like, say I do live streams, like, I'm not having a shitty time, but it's like, you can consider it work and I'm getting some money from it, right? So, I mean, there's ways around it you don't have to have a shitty life.
Right, I would agree, but like that's always like a forced output. Not that that's a bad thing, but you have to put energy into it to become happy. You have to do something. I mean, you could also, like, I guess, meditate and find it like within yourself, but it's always an effort.
Well, so
You know, the default
so
position.
you're saying effort though. Yeah. So
Like,
hold on. So effort though, you get happier from effort though. Like people will say emotion is in your motion, right? Your brain is in the feet. You get happier from doing things. So the act of actually putting effort towards things makes you happier.
yeah, I would agree with that. But say if you know, we're both in the fitness industry. Say if like we're putting effort into, I guess you're running now. Like, say if you're running and then all of a sudden like you injure your ankle, you know, you're back to the default position of like, oh man, like there's pain in my ankle, and then that could kind of take you off the path that you were on. So no matter what, like there's no like utopia of happiness. There's only
So you just described the situation I'm in right now, right? So I just got a hernia. I can't run for 3 months. I'm not suffering. Would you say I'm suffering right now?
No, I'm not saying.
Do I look like I'm suffering?
But that's no, you don't. But that's a form of pain, which I guess is a form of mild suffering. Like in an ideal world, you wouldn't have a hernia. In an ideal world, you could like wake up and run as much as you want with recovering as fast as you can, and you wouldn't have to worry about like, you know, anything else. Like that would be a good default position. You know, that would almost be heaven-like.
So what you just said too, you just made an argument for the future. So you're just saying like, you know, if this was a perfect world, you could fix your hernia without any pain, or you could, you know, and all this stuff, right? So that's where science is working towards right now. So science, I mean, we're talking about AIs, and you could put your brain mapped into an AI and have like,
I got a question about that.
Well-being and everything. So hold on. So I mean, if that's what we're working towards and that's what's going to happen, why would the solution be, well, let's end it all before we get there?
Well, I wouldn't say end it all, but I mean, from my understanding with antinatalism is to like, you know, for me, like we're already here, you know, let's live our lives. And I would agree with you to the most positive way possible. But in the back of our minds, we know that, you know, life is suffering, like continuing on, like having, you know, lives brought into the world with a, you know, an exponential curve of population. Well, I guess there's been studies to show that population is actually on a decline now. But either way, I mean, there's a lot of humans in the world, you know. So I just look at antinatalism as a position that you have to look at, you know, and really examine if, like, say you wanted to start a family in the future, you know, like, you know, because the children, are they going to have jobs? That's going to, you know, create suffering in the economy. Yeah. It's not looking too good.
I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but you're making more of an argument for maybe there should be like depopulation or this and that. Most antinatalists like are taking a hard like nuke the planet, or everybody should be sterilized with a virus. Like, are you talking about like, well, maybe we shouldn't bring a bunch of kids into an overpopulated world? That makes more sense, and kind of like have depopulation, because that's what I was saying earlier. But we're not. The conclusion, nuking the planet, is a crazy assertion that comes from nowhere.
Yeah, and I see that in the argumentation. Like, you know, obviously animals suffer. Anything that's living will suffer and die. You know, I mean, I get that, but at the same time, I also, you know and appreciate positive energy, and there's happiness as well. I get that, but like, just I think personally in the back of my mind, I'm like, do I want to like continue on? Well, I want to continue on with my life. Yeah, I do. But like other lives, do I, you know, I guess I'm at that age, like thinking about children, but like just knowing the way the economy is and knowing that life is suffering, like the Buddhists say, I don't know, it's just something to consider, you know, for the future.
Well, I mean, you're saying life is suffering, what the Buddhist says, right? But then the Buddhist doesn't say go kill everything. The Buddhist says, here's the best ways to deal with suffering to make yourself at peace, right?
Right. And that's kind of striving for enlightenment, you know, as the Buddhists say. Yeah. So, I mean,
it's the exact opposite conclusion, though, as an antinatalist.
Well, I mean, the true conclusion for a true antinatalist would be, wouldn't it be to kill themselves?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess.
I
Yeah,
mean,
No,
either way,
I don't think they advocate for that. I actually haven't come across any that have said that. Some of them say they will kill themselves. I have had some people in the comments about my video about Amendum say that they will kill themselves. So I mean, some of them will, but I don't think it's a general thing that can be said. In fact, I think most of them don't argue for that. Mike, you had a question.
Yeah, we were talking about sentience, and this is going to sound really weird, but this is back a couple of years ago. You know what happens when you get a bunch of guys on deployment talking, especially when it comes to robots. Do you think robots will ever have sentience, or do you think they'll ever, like in the future, are we going to have we're going to ever get to a point where, you know, robots having rights and, you know, AI, that kind of thing? And what would that kind of thing, what would it take for us to consider the AI, robots, sex robots, whatever you want to talk? You know, obviously capitalism will create them for a purpose, but at what point will they have individual?
Yeah. I only laughed because I don't know if you follow another vegan channel called Foot Soldier, but he and another vegan, Ask Yourself, just had like this huge blow up kind of back and forth about AI, and that's the only reason I laughed. Yeah, I think that's a huge topic. We should probably save it. It's the only reason being is that it's like 1 a.m. for me, and I'm really gonna have to get going pretty soon. But yeah, like that's a huge topic, and I mean, yeah, whether or not, yeah, like, is it possible? I don't know. I mean, I kind of don't think it is, but like, at least I'm just saying, based on all the AI that I've seen so far, I'm kind of in Foot Soldier's camp, which is he takes the side that it would have to like come from some type of technological advance that isn't there yet. So it would have to come from something that I haven't seen yet. None of the stuff I've seen so far makes me think that the artificial intelligence that we have is enough for sentience. That's my opinion.
I kind of have the opposite opinion, but I know you gotta sleep.
Yeah, we can do another one on that topic, you know, specifically. But yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, I'd like to do the AI debate. We could do that one day, but then I'd also like to do an organic versus GMO debate and a pro-life debate.
So
yeah, we can do that.
The AI debate. So what would the argument, who is arguing for what exactly, or what are you arguing for about AI?
Nobody, no, I wasn't saying anybody was arguing. I was just we were talking about robots, and I was just saying, you know, on deployment, you talk about crazy stuff. But one of the things that we had talked about was robots, and if at any point they'll have rights, because, you know, we know that capitalism and stuff creates robots for purposes. You have sex robots, you have personal companion robots that take your order. So you have all these different things. And at what point would they get to the point to where they would have rights? You know, because we talk about sentience of animals, insects, that kind of thing. So at what point would a government see robots having the right? You know, and it's just that sci-fi stuff, iRobot and stuff, and, you know, but, you know, all these different things. So it's just something to talk about in the future, is that that's going to be something that, you know, it's in our lifetime. You know, could we possibly see robots having some kind of rights based upon sentience or the ability to know what's going on? So just a question.
Only the sex robots that watch their fucking mouths. Those are the only ones that get rights. I'm just
right. Cool.
I didn't mean to swear in your stream. I just, you know, sorry.
That's all right. I'm not monetized.
I don't think you can monetize if you're vegan, right?
If you're vegan, you can't get monetized.
No, I just racism. No, I was talking about how you were talking about how people mainstream doesn't like to talk about veganism. I don't think they like to talk about a lot of things that goes against status quo. I was making that reference.
Oh, I don't know. I think veganism's fine on YouTube.
Cool.
All
right. Well, thanks for having me on. Thanks for the debate.
Yeah, thanks, guys, and thanks for everybody in the chat. And thank you to all of you guys. Really, it's been a pleasure. It's been good talking to you guys, and hopefully we can do it again sometime and do some other topics too.
Sounds good.
Thanks, man.
Cool.
Have a good night.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.